Well, welcome back with live pictures of Stage 3 of Giro d'Italia. The Sky team is up front. They're controlling the pace behind a group of 7 riders out front. They've been out front since the get-go of this stage. And Salvatore Puccio, resplendent in his Maglia Rosa, is nestled in there behind. Join us for the next part of this to see how he gets on after this. It's Stage 3 of Giro d'Italia 2013, 222 kilometres of riding through undulating countryside from Sorrento to Marina di Assia. The Sky team are on the front. They've got the leader's jersey on the back of their rider Salvatore Puccio, and they're chasing a break of 7 riders out front who have an advantage now of just around about 7 minutes. They've been controlling it at 7 minutes. Seems like a daunting prospect closing that down, but they've got 2 mountain climbs to negotiate between now and the finish. A second category ascent and a third category ascent, which are set to test the riders and could well make it, well, it's certainly going to make it difficult for the break to hang out front. It's also going to make it difficult for the sprint riders, sprint trains to get organised, and the sprinters will find it difficult to be part of the shake-up at the conclusion of the 222 kilometres in Marina di Assia in just over 90 kilometres time. My name is Declan Quigley. I'm joined by Sean Kelly to take you through all the action today. Quick reminder, you can get in touch with us at DQ Sport is the Twitter handle. And plenty of questions coming in today already. Quick bio for Salvatore Puccio. Interesting man, 23 years of age, from Sicily originally, although his family moved north to Assisi when he was 13 years of age. Raced as an amateur pretty much exclusively in Tuscany. And this now his second season with the Sky team. His first Grand Tour, and already he's got something to celebrate. In just the second road stage, he's wearing the Maglia Rosa. Getting one question in on Twitter: why don't they use transponders on every bike? Would get rid of some riders taking it easy. Not really sure what the thinking is there, but transponders are difficult if riders are going to have to change bike at some stage during the stage.
Well, of course, they have transponders for the timing. You know, the riders, they have that on the bike, and you can see that visibly. So as they come over the line, you can see it here just down at the bottom stay here. There's a little transponder attached onto the bike, and that gives the official timing. So I'm not too sure, our viewer, if he's talking about that, or but you know, that gives as the riders come over the line, you know, your time is automatically recorded, and that is something in the past certainly 10 plus years is in there, where, you know, many years ago, 15 plus years ago, 20 years ago, it was you know, somebody at the finish line who was actually with the camera, and, you know, it's taken. But then as the riders come over very bunched together, there can be some riders in the shadow of another rider, so you miss some of those numbers. So where with the transponder, like, it's registered electronically.
Certainly speeds up the work of getting a GC sheet at the end of the day. Cadel Evans of the BMC squad nestling in there in the middle of the peloton, saving him as much energy as possible. Question is, has Cadel still got what it takes to be a Grand Tour contender? There seems to be he certainly believes that he can be a contender for the Tour de France. There was a certain amount of doubt about whether he would actually take part in Giro d'Italia this year, and so far it's going okay, but this is the first test for the riders. It's what's described as a medium mountain stage, Sean. It shouldn't be too much of a difficulty for the likes of Cadel Evans, Bradley Wiggins, etc., but it could be one of those difficult ones.
Well, I think it's a stage, if you have difficulty in this one today, it's not a good thing. Although in the earlier stages, for Cadel Evans' take, for example, you know, he hadn't planned to go into this race. It's only in the last number of weeks that he really decided. You know, maybe he feels that he had to go into the Giro, and depending on what he's going to do in this Giro, is he going to really contest to get a final result, a podium result, let's call it, or is he just going to ride around, get a stage victory, and use that as preparation for the Tour? Because it would not be the first time some of the Tour riders have done that in the past. So we'll have to wait and see, and time will tell. But I don't think Cat 11 should have difficulty staying with the leading group today. Bradley Wiggins and all the other big favourites, they're not going to have a problem, because today's stage for them is not really, a big test. But in the earlier part of the race, some riders need a couple of days to get into the rhythm, and Cat 11's possibly, he might need a number of days to get into the rhythm of the race, and some riders just struggle a little bit in the earlier stages.
So David Miller and Nathan Haas on bottle duty for the Garmin Sharp squad, and their job is to distribute the bottles amongst their teammates, particularly, of course, Ryder Hagedal, the reigning champion of Giro d'Italia, wearing number 1 on his back. And David Miller has, it's been an interesting start to the Giro. He crashed on the first road stage on Saturday, but no significant harm done, just a few aches and pains, a few bruises, and he's back in action and rolled through at the back after the team time trial yesterday. Wasn't one of the 5 up front for the Garmin towards the end, but he managed to save his energy for today as best he could, following a big dig early on in that stage. And now the Sky team up front, slogging away. As I said, Wiggins said it's good for us to be out front today. I suppose at least they can control things, and it's a little bit of an ask for their team, of course, and with 3 weeks of racing ahead of them, they were probably thinking, oh God, do we have to control it all day, every day? Quick name check of the riders out front. 7 riders in total. Fabio Tagore of Vini Fantini, Manuele Boara of Saxo Tinkoff, Willem Wouters of Vacon Soleil, Jarlinson Pantano of Colombia, Bert de Backer, Argus Shimano, Dirk Bellemakers of Lotto Belisal, and Jackson Rodriguez of Androne Giocattoli, Venezuela. And he is indeed one of the 2 Venezuelan representatives on that team. The other South American in this break is Pantano from Colombia. 2 Italians, 2 Belgians as well making up the break. Steve Morabito, the Swiss rider with BMC. 2 Swiss riders on their team. It's Swiss sponsored as well, of course.
Allora, grazie. Possiamo procedere intanto con la premiazione di un'altra squadra.
And some interesting approaches to getting through that road furniture. And these are tight and twisty roads. They're difficult roads in so many ways, and this descent off the final climb is one that's going to be a bit of a tester. I can tell you that it's been raining at the finish line. The rain has stopped now, so the roads are starting to dry. So the expectation is that the riders will have a dry road off the final descent, which is, I think, probably good news, because it is a technical one, and it's plenty of opportunity for riders to come to grief on that. Storm GP Racing are asking how many team cars are there? Well, lots and lots. I think probably what, at least 2 in there, plus another 3 or 4 cars which they'll be using for getting to the feed zone and getting ahead to hotels, etc. And then each team will have a bus and then a van or 2 as well.
Well, I think too many is the answer. When you see the teams now, the number of vehicles they've got, of course, the bus, then they have the big truck for the mechanics, and then the team cars. As you said, 2 team cars allowed in the race. So when you start out the stage, the 2 teams cars follow, and then when the breakaway gets away, as we have here, a breakaway, when it gets over a minute, then the team car 2 is allowed to follow on, but team car 1 can go ahead as well if they prefer to do that. If they have somebody in the break that they feel they need a first director sportive up there to give him the guidance and to give the tactics. So that is the reason for the 2 team cars, of course. And in the mountain stages, when the bunch splits and you have a group of 30 or 40 riders in the leading group, and then there's a big group of riders, the rest of the peloton, let's call it, team car number 2 follows with them, and it all works, of course, on the general classification. The leader in the general classification, well, that's the team car that gets number one car in the cavalcade and further down.
86 kilometers remaining, and 2 ascents for the riders today. Mercato Cilento his second cat climb. It's got a little bit of a ramp up, then a few kilometers, quite a couple of kilometers, relatively flat, and then it ramps up again, heading to the 148 kilometer point of this 222 kilometer stage. And back in the peloton, Mark Cavendish is having a little chat. Looks cool, calm and relaxed at the moment, but one wonders how he's going to feel a little bit later on. Meanwhile, in the break, Fabio Tagore gets his instructions from his team. Good opportunity for Vinnie Fantini to get some decent publicity. And the big question is, can Cavendish get over those two hills and get involved in this finish? Did a superb job, you'd have to say, in the first stage. Shepherded and marshalled very well throughout the stage until the last few kilometers, when his team gave it up to another couple of teams, particularly the Orica Green Edges. They took up the challenge of setting the pace and trying to put Cavendish and co under pressure. And they certainly did look under pressure, but that crash that happened in the last couple of kilometers perhaps did Cavendish a favour. Then Gert Stegmans hit mechanical problems, and well, he had to make a big effort to get round, but Cavendish shows just what a classy sprinter he is. Possibly the best ever. It's a debate that will rage for quite a while, but there's a few that would argue about it at the moment. We've got a quick shot of Pablo Urtasun, who's been in the wars. He had a bad crash on the first day and trailed in more than 5 minutes down. And he's been getting treatment on his damaged leg, but he's still in there, and that's good news. So no retirement so far of the 209 riders that started the race on Saturday. These 7 riders up front. Well, here's an interesting question. How many days will a tyre last before they're going to be changed by the mechanics? I suppose it really depends on how many cuts they're going to get and what sort of terrain they're racing over. If it's smooth terrain and they're not really wearing down the thread, then there's absolutely no reason to change it. But if they start to develop cuts, well, they'll be changing them regularly, Sean. Yes,
well, I think the mechanics, they just check the tyres every evening, and if there's any little cuts at all on the tyre, well, then they're changed immediately. And you know, you can put on a new tyre and you can be lucky, you can get 2 or 3 days out with no problem, but you can go out in the first couple of miles and you can have a puncture and you can get a cut in your tyre if you get a bit of a you know, an edgy stone or a piece of glass on the road. So it's the same for you know, the leisure cyclist. You can go into the bike shop, you can buy a new tyre and you only get 3 days out of it, unfortunately, but you can get 3 months as well, or 6 months out of it. So it's just the look of the draw, really.
Yeah, and so what's absolutely guaranteed is your tyre won't last the following day if you say, well, I haven't had a puncture in a while, and the tyres seem to be lasting quite well. So don't ever say that. So the riders are enjoying their run down the Amalfi Coast. Still 7 minutes between themselves and the break up front. Join us. Welcome back. 7 riders still out front with just over 80 kilometres to go. Around about 50 miles left for these riders and 2 big hills to negotiate if they're to try and hold off the peloton at the moment. Fabio Tagore up front is the virtual race leader, but Salvatore Puccio will probably be not that concerned back in the peloton as his Sky team control the pace out front. They had a maximum of 7 minutes. It's hovering around about the 6-minute mark at the moment. And the 7 riders out front: Fabio Tagore, Vinnie Fantini, who's the best placed on overall GC, Manuele Boara of Saxo Tinkoff, Willem Wouters, Vacon Soleil, Jarlinson Pantano of Colombia, Bart de Backer, Argos Shimano, Dirk Bellemakers of Lotto Belisol, and Jackson Rodriguez of Androni Giocattoli are the men up front, working hard, toiling hard in the Amalfi sun. As meanwhile, it looks as if there's a decent amount of pressure on in the peloton as well, as they look to perhaps start to do a job on that gap out front, just close it down a little bit. and the controversy about who exactly is going to be leading the Sky Pro Cycling squad rages on. We understand Sky have said this morning that Bradley Wiggins is not the leader for the Tour de France. It will be for Chris Froome. It's all about Chris Froome. So, Sean, is there any way that Bradley Wiggins can race himself into contention for leadership of the team by winning Giro d'Italia, or would that in a way perhaps make it more difficult for him? Will they? How do they possibly solve this conundrum? Because the controversy is likely to rage all the way to the first mountaintop finish, I'd imagine, of Tour de France. And Bradley Wiggins said that this was his main focus for the year, but now he's kind of put a cat amongst the pigeons, really, a little bit with his comments about perhaps leading the team alongside Chris Froome in Sky. Is there any way they can have two leaders and let them go at it?
Well, I think it's a good thing to have two leaders, but it's not such a good thing for the riders themselves. And for Christopher Froome, for example, you know, last year after the Tour, he was guaranteed pretty much that he would be the leader for the Tour de France in 2013. And that's all changed a bit in the last number of weeks, with Bradley Wiggins saying, well, I'm interested in the Tour as well. It will depend what will happen in the Giro here. I think if Bradley Wiggins wins Giro, well, then that will take the pressure off as well. And, you know, he will be pretty happy coming out of the Giro with a victory. But if he does win the Giro, well, then it could be a bit more difficult situation. But Team Sky, it's a great situation to be in, because you've got two cars to play. And as you know, in the Tour of France, there can so much happen in the first week of racing. The first number of days of racing is hectic. Everybody is, you know, real nervous. Starting in Corsica this year is going to be more hectic again, because a lot of street furniture in Corsica, and I spoke to some of the riders that have been out there doing a recce on the 3 stages in Corsica, and they said it's very, very dangerous. And so, you know, you just never know what would happen, and that is a great situation to be in for a team that you have two riders. But how it's going to be worked out, I cannot say. I just I can't see at the moment what they're going to do, but it's certainly causing a stir and a lot of publicity and a lot of talk about it, and that's going to go on all the way to the Tour, unless they can really put the leader and say, well, they come out and they make the, you know, a solid statement saying that Christopher Froome is the leader, for example. Otherwise it will just keep on for all the way to the Tour.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's no real value. It takes too much attention away, makes it difficult for the riders, makes them cranky when they have to answer so many questions about it. I mean, is it a major distraction or diversion?
Unless the riders know more than we do. Maybe, you know, it's a tactic as well, publicity, because it's going to create a lot of interest now in Sky and the riders. And, you know, all publicity is good, as they say. And that is certainly going to be the case unless it's really totally cleared up before the Tour. And if the riders know more than we do, for example, well, then they can be relaxed behind the scenes. And but it's an interesting one. And it's not the first time, for example. You know, you go back over the years, we did see with Greg LeMond, Bernardino, when Ian was winning his last Tour, LeMond, he was one of the big helpers there in the very vital moments, and he was promised that Ian would, you know, be at his side and his domestique for the following year, but it didn't work out exactly in that way. Going back to the Giro, for example, with Vincentini and Stephen Roach, they also had a battle there. So, you know, it's not
a hell of a battle, really.
It's not anything new in cycling, and we could see in the Tour in July another one of those.
Oh, that was a particularly interesting one when there was a pitched battle, and Stephen Roach ended up in a situation where he was getting death threats and had to be protected by friends from other teams. Robert Miller was one. I'm trying to think, was Eric Breukink another one of them? And they were on either side of him trying to protect him from the somewhat passionate Italian fans who had their views about the fact that he was attacking his teammate in the race. Although, yes, in fairness to Stephen, he says, I never attacked him, I just went faster down a particular descent, and Roberto wasn't able to follow. But
yes, and of course the Italians, you know, they have the Tifosi, you know, they have an Italian rider, and you know, they get very much behind the rider. Like this, you know, they're so enthusiastic about their biking, about their, you know, about their favourite riders, and it was a difficult time for Roach in that year in '87.
That was his big year, '87. He did come out with victory in the Giro d'Italia, and of course went on to win the Tour de France and the World Championships, which, as any schoolboy will tell you, only one other person has done, and that, of course, being Eddie Merckx. Eddie Merckx took his first of 5 victories in the Giro d'Italia in 1968, memory serves. He's one of, I think, three riders that have won the Giro on 5 occasions. Alfredo Binda, of course, was the first of those. 5:37 now, the gap between the group and the peloton, so it looks like the hammer's down. We're heading towards the important part of this race.
And now it looks like that Sky has, you know, peeled off the front a bit, and that is also the tactic. You just keep the breakaway at allow them to take the advantage where, you know, it looks like that they could be pulled back in the end. And when you make the calculation, just over 5.5 minutes with 78 kilometres to go, a kilometre per a minute per 10 kilometre, so it is within the reach. And when you do that with the team, well, then there's a lot of teams that will take it up if they have interest in the sprint. And we can see Omega Pharma Quickstep are the one who is starting to, you know, keep the pace high on the front of the bunch at the moment. But the breakaway, our 7 leaders, you know, it's a nice advantage at the moment, because with the hills thrown in, I'm afraid that Omega Pharma Quickstep will have difficulty keeping it going on the hill, because they will get, you know, a little bit broken on the climb. And the first climb we have, the summit, is 69 kilometres, and the finish is a long ways out. They still need to keep all their troops together to ride afterwards, do the descent a little bit in the valley, and go on to the final climb to keep the pace very high. So if it really breaks up on the first climb of the day, that could really upset the chase and the pulling back of our 7-man breakaway.
Well, we're on that climb now, and you can see that there are little ramps that are really going to test the riders, and this isn't going to be easy for the sprinters. It's going to be a passista, someone who is able to get over the lumps and bumps that topography presents to them, and at the end of it have perhaps a little bit of a gallop. And these riders will ride a steady tempo up here. It'll be interesting to see whether any of them feels moved and exercised to try and break clear. Of course, there are mountains points on offer, and Giovanni Visconti of the Movistar team is leading the mountains classification at the moment, just as 3 points, and looks like he's going to lose that jersey, because the group up front surely have the opportunity to take big points there. A few questions coming in. Well, one from Carl Donaldson. Declan, I crashed in a race yesterday and broke my collarbone. Can I get a shout out from the great Sean Kelly to cheer me up 6 weeks out? You've broken your collarbone, haven't you?
Yes, I've broken a number of times, and you know, it's often the saying out in the club runs, well, unless you break a collarbone once in your career, you're not a real bike rider.
Oh God, don't say that. I'm not a real bike rider. I don't want to be a real bike rider.
And of course the collarbone, it's a pretty quick recovery, you know, 3 weeks. You can be back on the rollers, do a bit, you know, with the fixed rollers at home, the turbo trainer, and then you're back on the bike, you know, 5 weeks you can be back on the road. And in that 3 week period where you're probably maybe totally off, you know, you don't lose that much, you get back pretty quickly.
How many times did you do it?
3 times.
Right, and famously in the Tour in, what year was it, 80?
87 in the Tour of France, yes, yeah. And on the Tour of Flanders another time. And funnily, most of the time I broke the collarbone, it was at a very slow rate, you know, going along at a casual rate in the bunch, and just somebody falling in front or just touching a wheel of a guy in front, and down you go, and you fall very heavily. And I took some, you know, big time spills in the sprints, and never broke anything in those ones. It's just that if you fall heavily, that's when you can do the collarbone.
Sometimes they say with the collarbone, because if you get your hand out, you're more likely to do your collarbone. So it can often be a slower crash where you actually have the opportunity to get your hand out.
When you're going slow, you just, you know, you fall down very heavily. But when you have speed, you slide very quickly along the road, and you don't, you know, bang off the road as heavily. And that's the reason. Certainly for me, it was all times I broke the collarbone was at very slow speeds.
Okay, they are whittling the gap down. Just inside 6 minutes now. And up front, Omega Pharma Quickstep and the Astana's looking to get involved and close down that gap as the group up front attempts to hang on out there in front. We're on the first classified climb of the day of 2. So join us to see how they get on at the top of this after this short break. Welcome back to stage 3 of Giro d'Italia 2013 with 7 riders out front. They've been reduced down to, I think there's just 6 of them now. So one of the riders perhaps struggling a little bit further back. And there we have it. Looks like it's the representative of Argos Shimano, Bert de Backer. Indeed, and it is. Who's desperately trying to find enough to get back on terms with that group. And look at as they hit there, it's like a wall, isn't it, when you turn left? It's almost like a berg. Are there problems for one or two of the riders? They came off, and I think it's just congestion as much as anything else. It's like they turned left in your local sportive, and riders struggling for a gear. Oh, Katusha's that was Kozonchuk, Dmitry Kozonchuk of Katusha. He's not the only one to hit problems. One of the Blanco riders in on the left-hand side. It's Kelderman, Wilco Kelderman. As Blanco are on the front, and perhaps they got the shout that one of their riders is in trouble, so they won't set too difficult a tempo. As up front you can tell there's quite a bit more urgency from the breakaway riders.
And a lot of riders getting caught out there on that left-hand turn, which was, turned up very steeply, and of course wrong gearing, trying to get off the bigger chainring, and a lot of problems. We can see there on the front of Blanco, Kreiswick. He's had a good performance in this Giro. It'll be interesting to see. The past years he's performed very well in this one, and will he be able to, to get in a top 10 place? I think he's had a top place in the past, so he'll be looking forward to having a good performance as we see him here on the front.
And interesting that Sky have gone back into the middle of the pack, and they're leaving it up to other teams to take it up and to set the tempo. And what's the thinking here? Is it about riders trying to get in position to maybe take some mountains points?
I think it's just all about just staying on the front and keeping a good position, and the teams we can see there, Omega Pharma, Quickstep, just setting a pace for the moment, and with 75 kilometres to go, you certainly don't want to up the pace too much and lose some of your teammates here. They will try and keep them together here for the moment, and after the climb make a good descent, and then in the valley as well there's quite a bit here. There's probably 15-20 kilometres in the valley where you can really pull back this advantage of the breakaway. And then the first part of the climb as well, if you have 4 or 5 riders really up the pace, well, you can close down the breakaway, close down many minutes very quickly. So I think that is the tactic at the moment. But with the advantage, just 5:30 was the last time check we've had. It's still a nice advantage for the breakaway if they can get it together again after the climb, work well together, and arrive into the final climb with about 4 minutes. Well, they could go a long ways in this stage.
Well, that would be interesting if they managed to hang on. The calculation wouldn't have been quite so perfect by the Sky squad, and indeed the rest of the bunch. But up front, they're blowing hard up there, and they're taking on lots of water because they've been making much bigger efforts than the riders behind in the peloton. Colombia's Jarlinson Pantano on the front. As you might expect from a Colombian rider, he's really enjoying the when it goes uphill. The minute the gradient starts to steepen, you often see the Colombian riders coming to the front, and it's great to see a Colombian team. They got a wildcard invitation, and so far they're justifying it. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, Bart de Backer is in a world of hurt because he knows he's got to try and limit his losses before the top of the hill to try and even think about getting back on. But the riders up front are going to be very motivated on the descent, so it's going to be a big ask for him. Now Pantano ends up at the back of the group, so they're all working well and setting a decent rhythm, there's no doubt about it. Jackson Rodriguez there for Androni in the white jersey. Fabio Tagore in the Vinnie Fantini, the extremely yellow outfit. Someone said that someone suggested he's wearing a high-vis jacket. Was that a danger to other cyclists? Problems for one of the Movistars on the right-hand side. Quick side of the mountains jersey of Visconti as well. Nasser Bohani actually finished last on the stage yesterday, went out the back of his Française de Jeu team and then just coasted in, saving as much energy as he possibly could. He's made an amazing contribution to professional cycling in the last couple of seasons and really seems to be getting it together. Great stage win in Paris-Nice this year. And of course he'll be impressed and motivated as well by the performance of the other sprinter in the team, Arnaud Démare, in his victory in the 4 days of Dunkirk. .416 now the gap. .28-year-old Venezuelan Jackson Rodriguez. He's been a pro with Androni since 2008. Third in Tour of Langkawi in 2009, so he's got a decent pedigree. And there's the scene through the hazy sunshine on the Amalfi Coast. And that's what awaits the riders in the peloton as they chase this breakaway group. Peloton very much Gruppo Compatto at the moment. And this will be good news for the sprinters, but they'll be hurting in there as they try and maintain their position in the group. It's been an awful lot of talk. Well, there, just as we say, Mark Cavendish, is he slipping towards the tail of the group? Maybe we get a slightly wider shot. Currently 40th, 28 seconds down in the mountain, in the points leader's jersey. And he has race director's car behind him, so Cavendish is struggling. And if he can't get over this one, then it's going to be tough for him.
Yes, it's not looking good when you're struggling at this point. And the peloton on the front, we could see they're just making a tempo at the moment. There's, there's no sudden up in pace and getting into difficulty. The warm conditions we can see there, the riders are starting to suffer, but Mark Cavendish suffering a bit too early, because when you go on to the next climb, when they really will push on, I think it's going to be difficult for him the way he's performing at the moment.
Lots of questions coming in. Andrew Stewart's asking, what does Sean think of the electronic gears? Do you think their reliability is proven? Certainly they are an amazing piece of technology and work well, but do you think the advantage is worth it?
Well, I think yes, they function very well. I've used them on a number of occasions. Very, very smooth changing, and it makes it, simple for changing as well. There's a little bit of teething problems with them, that's still going on, but I think it's going to be the future. Give it a bit of time, and I think we will see everybody will be on the electronic shifters in the next number of years.
Well, Cavendish got a little bit of company, and he's going to need it, because he has to try and find a way back on. I think it's probably, there's a pretty good chance he'll get back on, but what sort of a state is he going to be in for the final hill? That's the question.
Yes, well, I think the final hill is going to be much the same as the one we've got here, but the speed will be much higher. The peloton will go at a very fast pace, and it will depend a lot on what's happening out in front. If they're getting close to catching the breakaway, well, then there will be teams saying, well, we can get this break back and contest for the stage victory. But still, it's going to be nervous whatever the situation out front is. If the breaks manage to hold on to a big advantage, which they have at the moment, 4:30, if they can hold that going into the final climb, and if they do that, well, then that will be sufficient, I would reckon, to hold on. But the peloton will really go fast, because we know this descent to the finish, the final climb, it's 19.8 kilometers from the summit to the finish. They're going to go down very, very fast. Everyone will be nervous because of that on the climb, and the speed will just start upping and upping naturally as we go on to the final climb of the day.
Well, it's interesting that up front they are all taking a turn on the hill. There's no question of one rider feeling stronger than the rest and setting a tempo that they're all struggling. So they are working very well as a group.
And that's what they've got to do, because if they start attacking each other, well, then it's game over, really. If they ride a good tempo on the climb and get the 6 riders, which they have together in the front in the breakaway at the moment, get them over the climb and then start to work well together, that is their opportunity or their chance to hold on to the finish.
Anthony Roux at the back for Française de Jeux. Jesse Sargent as well. You see him all over his bike for Radio Shack there, and he's really struggling. Pushing hard to try and maintain position in the group. Pablo Lastras at the back as well. He's celebrating his birthday today, I think. No, it's Ventoso from the Movistar team, celebrating his 28th birthday. So congratulations to him, and he'll have earned his birthday cake at the end of today's stage, you can be sure of it.
And of course Ventoso, a good one for the stage today. He can get over the climbs pretty well. He is able to cling on in there in a big group of riders, and if you have 60, 70 riders, I would expect him to be there to finish. Where the better sprinters, as we just talked about, Mark Cavendish, and the ones who are the real fast men, they have difficulty getting over those climbs, and it could be just one of these sprinters who's always there in the top 5, the top 10 riders, but still just not fast enough to beat the big sprinters. They could just get to the stage and get a stage victory today.
And of the sprinters, of the fast riders, there's been a little bit of talk about Sasha Modolo perhaps having the best facility for getting over a hill.
Well, I think the Italians are talking a lot about Modolo, and he's that type of rider as well. He can get over these gradient of climbs, the distance of the climbs, and he will be anybody who know they can just get over the climbs with a big group of riders. They will be really digging in to stay here today, because they know it's the opportunity. The bigger sprinters more than likely will not be able to hold on, and then if you get to a sprint finish with 60 riders, and a Modolo type of rider, Ventoso, those sort of riders, well, they have a great chance of getting a stage victory.
And David McCann is asking, I wonder, is it David McCann, the racing cyclist? Do you guys think today presents an opportunity for Nibali to claw a few seconds back on the final descent, or too early in the race? I mean, there's been an awful lot of talk about Nibali having to try and snatch those bonus seconds, as well as getting a few seconds ahead of Bradley Wiggins. He needs to try and get into the top 3 on stages to get the bonus seconds. Do you think today is the sort of stage where he'll actually try and have a go, or will he try and keep his powder dry for another couple of days?
Well, you can never relax with Nibali. We've seen him in the past, last year on the Tour of France, Torino Adriatico of late this season, where he won. He just any opportunity, if you sit a bit too far back in the peloton and he knows that, well, then he's liable to attack on the descent. One or two teammates start making the descent very quickly in the beginning, and then he takes over. So you cannot afford to stay too far away from him. And if the situation is that it's looking like the stage victory is there to be taken, well, then that's more of an incentive for him, because with the time bonification. So with Nibali, you can never relax, and you can be sure Director of Sportives are going to be telling their riders, the other favourites, be careful with Nibali, stay very close to him or stay in front of him on the climb. That way, if he goes in the attack, well, you can react immediately.
So the leading riders heading towards the top of the first climb, San Mauro di Cilento, and easing themselves over the top of that little drag. 4.5 minutes still to the good. It's a strong advantage, but still, remember, there is that final climb. It's a third cat climb, a short, sharp shock. And at the summit of the final climb, Sella di Catona comes with just 20 kilometres to go, the vast majority of which is downhill. Mattia Gavazzi working hard in the group, as indeed are the breakaway out front. Quick reminder, Jackson Rodriguez of Androni Giocattoli is in there. So too is Fabio Tagore, the leader on the road, the highest placed on general classification of these riders. So should they maintain this advantage, then he would go into the pink jersey tomorrow. Manuel Boara, Willem Wouters, Jarlinson Pantano and Dirk Bellemakers are in there. Bert de Backer is chasing behind. Meanwhile, Wigo
at ease,
looking comfortable. And he was he paid tribute to his teammate Salvatore Puccio. Absolutely delighted for him. Puccio was a little bit surprised, and of course the team got Cataldo to lead across the line, thinking that Cataldo, assuming they won the stage, that Cataldo would be the one that was in pink. But because Puccio had been quite a bit further ahead in the previous day's road stage, well, he was higher placed overall going into that stage. He finished in the same time, and he got the jersey. So it was a surprising miscalculation by the Sky Squad not to actually realise if that's actually the case.
Yes, it is a surprising one, because you would think they would have the the regulations worked out pretty well. And but again, it's amazing there, the riders, you know, some of the regulations are not too clear on them, and when you lead over at the same time, if you lead over in the team time trial, you take the leader's jersey if your team is the fastest time, of course, in the team time trial. But with the previous day, it was down to the count where you finished on the stage, and the Puccino had the best place on the first road stage, so he was given the race leader's jersey.
So they're all kicking off now. Boara fancies the Mountains points. There's Mountains jersey up for offer currently on the back of Visconti of Movistar, and these riders are no longer working as one unit, and it's an effort that Dirk Bellemakers is not too keen to have to make at the moment. So they've controlled that little effort from Boara, foiled, and the rider who seemed to get onto his wheel, certainly did get onto his wheel a lot quicker, was Jarlinson Pantano of Colombia. So he's obviously climbing well. Young Venezuelan rider, but he's 28 years of age. Jackson Rodriguez goes to the left-hand side, and it's a little bit of cat and mouse now. It's a little bit of chess being played. Didn't work out for Boara on that case, as they got another kick. Boara it is that takes it up as they head towards the line. Looks like he's got a strong opportunity to get the points, but there's still a bit of a distance to go to the top of this hill. And Tagore looks to be comfortable as well. Willem Wouters of Vakon Soleil also sitting comfortably in the wheels. Tagore in his second Giro, the young Italian, 27 years of age. He's a pro since 2008. And he seems happy enough to take it up and set a tempo. Having said that, Bellemakers has made it back on safely, so he'll be there for the descent. And you can be pretty sure that once they've got this little scatter over with, they'll be looking for each other again, because they need all the bodies they can get. Now the sprint is on again. It's kicked off again by Boara. Pantano in his wheel isn't able to do anything about it, and that means that Wouters of Vakon Soleil has to close the gap. So that's a great opportunity for Boara to take these points. But Wouters has managed to get his wheel, and he's just quite a bit stronger. Better sprinter, really. I think by the time they got to the top of that hill, it had flattened out enough to make it more of a sprinter's finish than a climber's finish. So he takes the points, and he moves into the lead in this competition. Still with the opportunity to stay out front for the second hill. So there's mountain points on offer there. Of course, as a second category climb, if they were caught now, assuming that one of the riders that took points on the first day didn't take points on that hill, then the likelihood is that Wouters would pull on the blue jersey at the conclusion of today's activities. And it's an important opportunity for a rider to put himself in the shop window. It's an extremely coveted competition, that blue jersey. First worn in 1973, I believe, was the first year that they introduced it into the... They had a climbers competition for many, many years, but they didn't have a jersey. I think it was Fuentes that was the first person to wear the Mountains jersey in Giro d'Italia back then, when he was battling with Merckx, Gimondi et al. For overall success. Now the gap between the bunch behind has whittling away. It's being controlled by the Sky team once more. They've got up front. They've got over this this first ramp, and so now it's just a steady drag as they go towards the top. So Sky decide to take it up again. And controlling the tempo well. Salvatore Puccio, of course, as I said, the 6th Sicilian to wear the Maglia Rosa. And Vincenzo Nibali, of course, is one of the other 5. Question is, has Bradley Wiggins got the team? I mean, if they is the A team going to France? Is the B team at the Giro, Sean?
Well, I think with Sky team, they have a couple of A teams. When you look at the the roster of riders they've got, and they've certainly got the team here capable of controlling the race. And if it comes to a situation where they've got to do that, I don't think there should be any difficulty. We can see here at the moment they're just taking control again, do this climb, make the descent, and that's just to play safe for the moment. They're not really worried about the breakaway out front at the moment, I don't think, because they already stopped before the climb and they left the other teams control and do the riding on the front, do the pulling on the front of the peloton. So here again now they will make the descent, and then I think they will take it a little bit easier again. Although as we get further on the stage, getting close to the finish, we do this quite a long descent, and then there's a bit in the valley, of course, where it's probably about 15 kilometres. I'd not be surprised if there's other teams who will take it up from there on, but at the moment they're playing safe. And the final climb as well, they will have to be careful that they keep Bradley Wiggins up to the front and keep as many riders as possible to the front end of the bunch, make the descent into the final climb, and that way you have all the riders in a safer zone.
There's confirmation of the first mountains points going to Willem Wouters ahead of Manuele Barro and Fabio Tagore. So it is Wouters that's favourite for the mountains jersey at the conclusion of today. 23-year-old Belgian, he's second year on the team. No pro wins so far, so this would represent a considerable scalp in his considerable move up in his career. Pantano on the back and groups coming through in dribs and drabs. Interesting to see how far back Cavendish is, and indeed how many other sprinters are with him.
Yes, I think it's quite a big group. A lot of riders have lost contact here, and we can see the gap is going to be substantial, and to make this descent, unless you can arrive at the top 25-30 seconds down, it could be difficult for them to get back in. And it depends on what happened up front as well. If the peloton really push on, they continue on the descent quite a strong pace, and then in the valley itself, if they just push on there, it could be difficult for the ones dropped on the climb to get back into the main peloton.
Yeah, how long? Well, what sort of gap is reasonable, and what sort of gap is just too much? 3:43, I believe it was, as the group came across, and this is the Cavendish Group. It's a decent sized one, includes Nasser Bohani as well. And no doubt one or two other riders who are better on a flat surface.
Steve Cummins there on the rear of it.
Steve Cummins, good engine to have.
Yes.
You're looking to close the gap.
Yes, but will he want to close the gap, because he's a lot of teammates up front, and maybe he's the one that is just taking the stage here. Surprising to see him back there, because I think he is capable of being in the front of the bunch, but sometimes he stays very much on the rear and he just follows in the very last position of the peloton. And if you do that, well, then you're going to find yourself in the splits on the climbs and find yourself in a group that he's in at the moment.
Tagore does a big turn on the front of the break. 6 riders in there at the moment. And they're super motivated. He's the most motivated of them all. Highest placed on general classification. If by some miracle they manage to hang out front, as Bellemakers managed to just claw his way back onto the group.
The bell is back.
Yeah, and he's a guy you'd want to have, isn't he? He's a big, tall guy, so you can be pretty sure that he's going to be able to generate decent power on the descents. That's assuming he's still got the legs left. He's been out there for a while now. They've been out there since the get-go, since kilometre 0. Jackson Rodriguez, Bellemakers, Lotto Belisson, Willem Wouters of Facon Soleil, Jarlinson Pantano of Colombia, Rodriguez Boara of Saxo Tinkoff, and Fabio Tagore, the aforementioned, of Vini Fantini. At Bosca 03 is saying, what do you think of Matty Goss for today? We didn't get sight of him in the Cavendish Group there, but he is probably has greater facility on the hills than Mark Cavendish. He can get over some of the lumps and bumps a little bit better than most gallopers.
Yes, he can hang in there, and I think he proved that when he won his Milan-San Remo. To get over the Poggio in the final of a almost 300-kilometre race. If you can do that, well, you could hang in there today. But I'm afraid, looking at the climb there and the conditions as well, the warm conditions, it's very, very energy sapping out here today. And I think as we go on into the stage, the climbers will suffer that bit more. And it all depends on the final climb. If the race is really very, very fast, well, then it's going to be difficult for a rider like Matty Goss to hang in there. But it's the pace that really decides. If the peloton is really going to blow up to pieces, and if you have only 50 riders getting over the top of the climb, well, then it's hard to see the climbers like Matt Goss could stay in there.
Meanwhile, down at the back, you meet a better class of person back there. Thomas Dekker for the Garmin squad. Carmen Sharp's Thomas Dekker working hard to stay in position. This is the back of the peloton, and leaving a few bike lengths back, just to be as careful as possible as they go through these hairpins. It's easy to move up on the wheel again. And the peloton lined out. He's having a little look behind. No doubt he's going back to his team car to collect some bottles. Quick mention for Alex Dowsett. He's wearing the white jersey of the leader of the Under 25 competition, the youths classification. He's not actually leading that competition. That's being led by the race leader, Salvatore Puccio. But Alex Dowsett, in his first Grand Tour, riding with the Movistar team, has the opportunity to wear the white jersey. So that's a nice moment for him. As up front, it's Tagore that leads the field, and he seems the most animated of the group at the moment. 6 riders still out front trying to hang on to this advantage. Let's see how the bunch can get on. Join us for the next part after these. Welcome back. 6 riders still up front trying to hang on desperately ahead of the Sky-led peloton. These riders, they've had their advantage pared down to within 4 minutes. Will they be able to maintain that advantage, or perhaps even extend it a little bit, as the smaller group is able to negotiate these sinuous hairpinned descent and move out clear, perhaps as Sky take it up again on the front. They can control the gap. Just mentioned ahead of the break that Alex Dowsett is wearing white, so great day for him. And Mark Cavendish, of course, in the red points jersey, makes it 2 British riders in classification jerseys. And those jerseys, of course, are designed by Paul Smith this year. You wouldn't think there's that much designing that goes into something that's lycra, and you've already been told what the colour is. But I read an article about it before the start of the race, and well, it was incredibly detailed and an awful lot of work. And of course, Paul Smith is a massive fan of cycling, and it's a proud moment for him to be involved. I think he said it was more a labour of love, really, to be asked to design the Giro jerseys this year. Oh, and looks as if somebody's been in the wars. That's Pietropoli of the Lamprey squad. And just giving an indication of just how treacherous the descent is in a big group, and riders dive bombing down the inside of that hairpin. Oh, and I think it might have been one of the Argus Shimano riders almost got his front wheel taken out there, but no harm done. And the riders string out on the descent. And that's another reason why it's good to be up front in a group that's working just in one line, just 6 riders, much less likelihood of getting involved in any sort of crashes or any sort of schmozzles. Pietropoli comfortably in the cars here. And the roads have been resurfaced, no doubt, with the Giro in mind. And I think it's going to be a sore day for him. Sore in the morning when he wakes up and feels a little bit stiff. Meanwhile, riders from Katusha and Colombia. What do you think of these new crash outs, Sean, without the vents? They're a bit more like the sort of crash out that you had when you started out with the hard shell one towards the end of your career.
Yes, exactly. You know, the ventilation was poor in the earlier days when they brought out the hard shell helmet, and it's improved a lot. The ventilation is much better now, and in the early season, the lesser ventilation is much better because you get that cold wind going through the helmet. It can make it very uncomfortable, and but the Royals are still continuing on. But as the race go on, I think as it gets warmer, we will see them going back to the helmets with a bit more ventilation.
Yeah, Ian Hawthorne says Hinau and Uran in Wigo's squad must mean the A team. Would they be capable of 2 mountain lieutenant roles in consecutive Grand Tours? Well, that's interesting. Whether Brailsford will ask them to go to another Grand Tour, I wouldn't be surprised.
No, I'd not be surprised at all. I think they are very solid riders. They're proven riders in the past, and I think we should see both of them in the Tour de France lineup also.
Yeah, and judging by the team time trial performance of Sky compared to the team time trial performance of the team last year, certainly there's plenty of strength in that team for various scenarios, various conditions. Bit of a split in the group there, and that's no doubt, well, it's probably reasonable to assume that Pietropoli's crash could well have contributed to that little split, or perhaps it could be a group getting back on. But we did see it was a fairly big peloton at the top of the hill. It just could have been a little bit of a difficulty in that last village. 4:17 now, the gap between the leaders up front and the peloton behind. At DQ Sport is the Twitter handle if you'd like to get in touch with us. And the Vacan Soleil team car comes up for a little bit of a chat with Willem Wouters. Does the team car ever come up a little bit if the wind might be coming in from the right hand side? They might just come up for a chat with their rider. Is that
well, when you're in the plains,
is that something that's okay?
Yes, when you're in open countryside, of course, if the breakaway, they're out in front and they have a nice advantage. It's looking like touch and go that they can get to the finish, but it has to be very open roads, because here, as you go down a hill, it's not an advantage at all, the car coming beside you. But when you get onto the open roads, it does happen. We see these Rector Sportifs, they use that a lot. They make the calculation what side the wind is coming from, of course, and you go on the side just to give them protection from the wind for 200-300 meters. But the Commercials, if you give too long there, if you push it a bit too much, well then you get the orders to go back. And in the road racing it's allowed a bit, but in time trialing, for example, individual time trial or team time trial, well then they're very strict on that when the car comes close to the riders at all, they immediately call them to stay very much back from the riders.
Yes, yeah, they're well tuned to it, they're well aware. I think this might be the Cavendish. I thought I got a flash of Nasser Bohani's French national champions jersey just flashing past the camera. That could be the Cavendish Group chasing back on to the back of the bunch. And hopefully we'll get word of how what their progress is like. We saw one of the race director's cars stopped on the hairpin waiting for the group just to see what group was coming up behind and to pick them up. As the leaders expand their advantage, and Gianni Savio has a little look out the window and has a little chat with his rider Jackson Rodriguez, 28-year-old from Venezuela. And what's the word from Savio? Is he saying well done and keep doing it, or you need to think about attacking on the next hill?
Well, I think it looks like that he was telling him just to keep calm here, keep it nice and cool. And see what happened. And the advantage they have at the moment, 4:25, as I said, they've pulled out a bit because it came down to 4:10 at the 59-kilometre mark. So it means that they're working well together, but they have to keep on working, as we can see here. Tagore is just going on out in front, but it's difficult terrain here. You know, it's kicking up a little bit, and they're starting to suffer here at the moment. And not surprising, because with the conditions here very warm. But going on your own it's far too early. 54 kilometres plus to go, and they need to keep on working together. And you know, just that's their chance of holding on out. But it looks like now that the way things are in the front of the race, the breakaway, it's difficult to see them holding on.
Bit of a left field suggestion from Alan Heatley. Why doesn't Wiggo go for the green jersey in the Tour and let Froome go for yellow? I suppose for Wiggins to get green, he'd have to be going for yellow.
Well, not necessarily. You can go for the green jersey, just you know, really concentrate on the points when there's big points available. On the days you can pick up points, but it's a difficult one for a rider like Wiggins. He doesn't have a sprint at all, so when it comes in the bunch sprints, he doesn't get up there at all in the top 20 places, and you've got to be able to do that. You've got to be consistent every day on the flat stages. Certainly, you know, get into the top 5, top 10 in the bunch sprints, and then in the mountain stages you can pick up a lot. So you know, the green jersey, it's really designed for, you know, the sprint. And sometimes we see the riders who are, you know, pretty good sprinters, not the best sprinters, but good all-rounders as well, who can get over the climbs. And in my situation, I could get over the mountain stages quite well, and that's where I won a number of green jerseys, because I could mark up points on the medium mountain stages and take the advantage on the big sprinters.
So it's slightly different in your day. There tend to be more groups on the road, and the sprints weren't as well organised, were they?
Well, not as well organised. We did not have a train like we've had in the past. You know, we've seen with the Cipollini train, and then it went on from there. But still, you've got to, you know, to get the places. If you just look at you know, the points, the way they are giving out on the flat stages, the mountain stages, you just have to be consistent every day, and you definitely have to get some points on the flat stages. And now, of course, in the last years, we see the intermediate sprints have got very important in the Tour de France, where they give very big points. And a rider like Bradley Wiggins, he's not fast enough in the sprint to pick up points in those situations. So a green jersey is, you know, always going to be really impossible for Bradley Wiggins.
For him, I suppose. The fact that Joachim Rodriguez took the points jersey in this race last year and was an overall contender makes you think that perhaps. But the Giro is a very different race in terms of how it's organised, the route that's presented to the riders.
Well, I think in the Giro last year there was a lot of mountaintop finishes in the earlier part of the race as well, and then the big mountain stages. And Joachim Rodriguez, as we know, you know, he's a specialist in the small mountaintop finishes, meaning 2-3 kilometre climbs at the end of a stage. And then the big mountain stages he can do it as well. He's there at you know, 15-18 kilometre climbs to the finish. So you know, he's capable of doing that in both those style of stages, and that's the reason he was there for the points jersey in the end of Giro last year.
Meanwhile, Tagore suffers on alone. Just over 4 minutes is the gap between the leaders, 6 leaders up front, and the so the front of the race with Tagore chasing at 22 seconds. They're showing a pink jersey, I think, because he's the virtual leader on the road, perhaps, and then the peloton further back. So they're getting ready to welcome the riders to Marina di Assia at the conclusion of 222 kilometres. Sky are still controlling the peloton. Join us to see how they get on after this short break. Welcome back. Just 50 kilometres to go in stage 3 of Giro d'Italia, and this man is out front. Tagore is chasing for glory. He's the virtual leader on the road. He's the actual leader of the stage, and he's got around about 20-odd seconds advantage over a group of 5 riders behind that have kept him company for most of the stages to this point. Tagore of Vinny Fantini, the group, the bunch are at 4:17. As you can see, they've been controlled for much of the afternoon by the Sky Pro Cycling squad, working for Bradley Wiggins and, of course, for the current Maglia Rosa, Salvatore Puccio. And Puccio will be enjoying the efforts of his teammates so far today. It's interesting that we haven't seen him on the front, so they are certainly respecting the jersey and respecting his position in the jersey. And it looks as if they're willing to defend it for him, so that's a good thing. We've noticed as the riders work their way through the valley that Katusha have hit the front in just the last few kilometers, and they put a few riders on the front to drill it. It's certainly lined out in one big long line. Interesting to see what the ambitions of Katusha might be for the day, Sean. Anyone that takes your fancy? They didn't come with any established big bunch galloper, but presumably they have one or two riders in there that can get over the hills and have a bit of a finishing kick at the end of it. Yes,
and I think Luca Paolini, he's a good sprinter when it's a small group, and if you can get the real big sprinters out of the equation, then he is capable of doing something here. So I would reckon he will be the best one. They're certainly pushing on here. The interesting one is the moment the group, Mark Cavendish, have they made it back into the peloton? I'm not sure they have. I haven't seen him there, but that could be the reason as well. Keep the pace right high for the moment, and just keep the push on, and it will make it more difficult for that group to get back up to the main peloton.
Christian Meyer of Orica Green Edge just tags on the back of the group there. Got riders rejoining after the hill, also riders coming back up as well with bottles and food for their teammates. Well, the hammer's down, there's no doubt about it. That one big long line tells you all you need to know that we're racing here. The phony war is over in stage 3. As Katusha sacrifice a rider to try and close down the gap, and as much as anything put pressure on the riders chasing up from behind, or indeed riders, even if they've managed to get back in, to keep them under pressure so that they're suffering a bit when it comes to the final hill. Up front, it's a good ride by Fabio Tagore, 27 years of age, in his second Giro d'Italia. And certainly making a real name for himself today. He's a pro since 2008, so a very experienced rider. Measuring his effort as best he can. It's going to be a big ask for him to stay out front, but perhaps he has thoughts of mountains points, or perhaps he just feels, well, this is the big exploit, the beautiful exploit. I'm going to do my absolute level best. I wasn't happy with the pace of the riders behind, and this is my best chance of hanging on for as long as possible.
Yes, a surprising one, because the 6 riders, they had that very nice advantage, around the 4.5 minutes, a little bit under, and then he goes out on his own, and still, with just under 50 kilometers to go, it's a big ask, and I would prefer to see him, staying with the other riders, even if they were, some of them not contributing as much as you would like them to be. You try and just get them to work, motivate them a bit, and keep on riding together. And then in the final climb, if you've got real good legs and you feel good, you can just, go in the attack. But at this moment, it's early days to see him going out in front.
Problems for one or two riders behind. It's one of the Androni riders. Is that the rider from the break, or was I just looked up? Oh, it's been a crash.
Yes.
Okay. There's a Mega Pharma Quick Step card there, which tells me that it wasn't from the break. So hopefully we'll get some idea of exactly which riders were involved there, and hopefully they can jump back up and get back involved. Tagore out front and racing for glory. What sort of a gap does he need? I mean, if it will come into the bottom of the final hill, I mean, if he gets over the top with any sort of advantage at all, you'd imagine he's got a racer's chance of hanging on. But what sort of a gap does he need at the bottom of the hill, do you think, in order to hang on to an advantage?
Well, I think you need to have 2.5 minutes, certainly. Anything less would be difficult, especially when you go out on your own with 50 kilometres to go. It's going to be very energy sapping in the conditions we've got here today, the warm conditions. And that's where it's important, if you can hold on to a number of riders with you up front in a breakaway. And in the situation as it was with 6 riders, it's a real nice group, and if as I said, if there's a number of them maybe starting to struggle, not able to contribute a lot, still, if they take some bit on the front, some bit of the pace setting, well, then it helps a lot, and get to the final climb of the day. And of course, the final climb, it's a long one. It kicks up 2 ramps as such. It's about 5 kilometres each time. In the middle, you have a little bit of a respite, a little bit of a down period, but then from the top of the climb, it's still 19.8 kilometres to finish. I know it's downhill, but still, you know, you have to have that advantage of a minute plus at the top of the climb to hold on. So for me, you know, going into the attack at this moment, it's taking a bit of risk as we see another rider in a crash.
Yeah, Bardiani riders in the wars. And much frustration and groups all over the road, as you can see. It's been a tough old day of racing. That's Sonny Colbrelli of Bardiani, waiting for a car and struggling to get his chain back on. Now let's get a sight of exactly what happened. Colbrelli is picking himself up at that point. Oh, has he hit that concrete bollard? Well, that's just, well, that's a big fright, isn't it? That would be such a shock. He got shoved in on the left there. I'm not really exactly sure what happened. His bike ended up a little bit further beyond it, but, well, a frightening moment for Colbrelli, but no harm done.
Yes, I think a little bit of, you know, panic in the bunch. The road tightens a bit and everybody brakes a bit heavily, and if you react just a fraction too late, well, then, you know, you plough into the back of some of the riders and down you go, and I think that was his problem. Yeah,
he gets flicked at the very end of the group, it could be, or Tagore racing out front. Yeah, this hill, as you say, has 2 ramps. It's about 20 from the bottom of the valley up to the top of the hills, around about 20 kilometers of climbing, but they have that little descending point, and, you know, of about well, a couple of kilometers, and then off they go again for the final hill, and that's about 7 kilometers long. So there's a climb in there that's not classified, or else this classified climb is a good 20 kilometers long with a little bit of a break in between, depending on how you view it. But either way, it's going to be a tough one for the sprinters. It's just classified as a 3rd category ascent, but it's probably as demanding as the 2nd category ascent of San Marco Cilento.
Yes, it will be in the final, you know, when they go at the real fast rate, and that's going to be the difficult one, and they are certainly, whatever the situation lay as we get to the final climb, they're going to really push on here. And I think looking at, you know, the way things were working on the first climb of the day, difficult to see the sprinters hanging in there, and you know, difficult to understand this tactic as well, as you see, you know, Director Sportif Schinto talking with Tagore here from the Vini Fantini Cell Italia team. I'm surprised that, you know, he's taking it up this early, but again, maybe that we have some riders in the breakaway. Jackson Rodriguez, although he has lost already 2 minutes and 30 seconds plus. Pantano, who was at 56 seconds, maybe to think that those guys, the general classification that for further on the race, that the other teams might be, you know, not too keen to leave them take a big advantage. But I think going at this moment is going to be an impossible task for him to hold on out there.
Luca Scinto getting more and more exercised, I think, by the possibility that Tagore might be able to hang on as he issues his instructions by way of a bellow from the Vini Fantini team car. And Tagore knuckles down to the hard job of maintaining his advantage. And he's just in a world of hurt now. He's just at the absolute maximum that he can go without going over the top and immediately heading into the point where he can no longer get rid of the lactic acid. Meanwhile, the group behind now at 51 seconds, which gives you an indication of how well the Tagore has gone. How much energy is he using out on the road, and will this group be able to get back to him by the bottom of the final hill? They're still tapping out a tempo, going up and over, so it's not like it's completely destroyed and they've given up on the idea of staying out front.
Certainly not. They're working very well together, the 5 riders here, and it's going to be an interesting one as we see 50 seconds the advantage for Tagore. But when you look at the way these riders are working here, the 5 chasers, they are, you know, everybody's contributing their part, and I'd not be surprised if they see the, you know, we see this gap closing down on our leader out on the front.
So now we're heading to the point where it's starting to ramp up a little bit. You could see by the way that Tagore was sitting up in his handlebars a little bit.
It's ramping up everywhere.
Yeah, certainly the pace is ramping up.
As we can see here, it's really up in the pace, a big line of riders, and that's a sure sign that it's going at a very fast rate out front.
It's a big bunch, isn't it? 207 riders signed on, 207 riders still involved. Up front, the ones that creating all the hurt. Well, it's the Sky team that are watching and playing a watching brief, as Katusha look like they're very, very motivated indeed to try and do something. So still minutes advantage just about now for Tagore up front ahead of his former companions. And a few minutes advantage to the bunch behind, which seems to be very exercised now. So Tagore, can he hang on? That's the big question. Join us after this break to find out.
Is a game.
Welcome back to stage 3 of Giro d'Italia 2013, with Tagore out front for Vinny Vantini with an advantage now of just on 50 seconds. It's hovering to these 5 riders behind his former breakaway companions, and 3:48 to the bunch. And Sean Kelly alongside me reckons that he needs around about 2.5 minutes when he starts the final 7 kilometres up to Sella di Catona. The final climb, then he'll have 20 kilometres down to the finish from there, with a little bit of one short ramp in between, but it's a fast finish, there's no doubt about it, and it'll be an excellent opportunity for Tagore, not just to take stage victory, but also perhaps even to don the Maglia Rosa. So it's great to cheer for a lone raider pushing out front to see can he hang on. The bunch have realised the danger at this point. A little bit of a stall there, I think, as we in the last kilometre. But the pace is definitely hot and heavy at this point in the race. So the Gregario have a little look behind to try and pick up team cars. Mattia Gavazzi of Androni having a look behind. It's just there's a little stall and perhaps an opportunity for those riders to go back and grab a couple of bottles. It'll be one of the last opportunities they've got at this point, with just around about 25 miles left in the race. 40 kilometres to go for the leader up front. And meanwhile, the 5 riders behind in the break. Let's remind you of who they are. It's Manuele Boara of Saxo Tinkoff, Willem Wouters of Vacon Soleil, Jarlinson Pantano of Colombia, Dirk Bellemarkers of Lotto Belisol, and Jackson Rodriguez of Androni. Giocattoli at the back of the group there, just grabbing a gel or perhaps a little bit of food. Question we get asked often, Sean, is what sort of food do they take? What sort of food do the riders like? Is it all gels, or is it all sugary bars?
Sugary bars in the earlier part of the stage, you know, the energy bars, and there's you know, such a variety now. You know, there's a huge number of them out there, and some great flavours as well. So they go for the bars in the early part of the stage, and then as you get into the final 50-60 kilometres, you start using the gels, of course, because they're easier, gets into the system much quicker and easier to get down as well. And in the warm conditions, that's when it gets difficult to eat on the bike. When you're out there, you know, for 4.5-5 hours in the warm conditions, it's so difficult to eat some solid food. So in the end, the gels, the ones are the, you know, the ones which are used quite a lot. And of course, the teams also, they make up some, you know, a rice cake where they wrap it in a silver foil. Sometimes they make a bread roll where they put a bit of ham into it, or a bit of cheese, just to have something with a bit more taste to it, because when you're in a 3-week tour and you're having these energy bars and gels all the time, you know, it's difficult, you know, to continue on and getting them into your system. So a little bit of something different, like a bread roll, rice cake, it makes a change.
Much is spoken about, you know, how much that riders eat, but actually they spend their lives trying to make their bodies efficient, so that they don't actually need to use to eat as much on the bike, that they don't need as much of the fast sugars, the fast carbohydrates, that they can actually take their stores from fat.
Our leader on the road is still pulling out. I was expecting the gap to come down to our chases of the breakaway, but he's you know, pulling out a nice advantage, and still 3:26 of an advantage. It's looking good with just under 40 kilometres to go. It will be interesting to see as we get to the final climb of the day. I think, you know, the peloton will go at a very fast pace, and it's amazing a breakaway out front. They seem to have, a very big advantage, but it just comes down so quickly when the bunch starts to up the pace. And you have so many riders here who are fresh, been sitting in the group here all day, and when they come to the front, they can up the pace so much that 3-4 minutes can just melt down so quickly.
John McManus is asking, Twitter handle is @DQ Sport, by the way, if Sky want to give the jersey away today, what's a comfy gap? I suppose it depends on the rider.
Yes, it depends on the rider. And when you look at the riders out front, I don't think there's any worry about that, about losing the jersey maybe for a minute and a half, 2 minutes whatsoever. And it will be interesting to see. I think the calculation, you have to start making the calculations while you do not control the race fully, and Sky are doing it quite good up to this moment. Well, we see there they were riding, and then there was other teams wanted to take it up, and then at the crucial moment when they're on the climb, the descent, start taking it up on the front once again, and take it to a point, and then knock off again. And they've done that at the moment, I think. On the front of the bunch, we haven't as many Sky riders at all, if any, really contributing to the pace setting.
Hejidal has a little elbow-to-elbow moment with one of the Euskaltel riders. I think that's Egoy Martinez. A little conversation exchange between them. No doubt it was just, sorry mate, I didn't see you. Meanwhile, Fabio Tagore in his own personal hell at the moment of his own making, and well, he looks comfortable enough and seems to be tapping out a decent rhythm. He'll be hurting, but at least he's in control of his own situation at the moment. 103, he's opening the gap, of course, to the riders behind. They've now hit the slopes, the lower slopes of this hill. Marina de Asia is the target, and Sella de Catona is the hill that they're aiming towards, with 20 kilometres of the race remaining. So they're about 17 kilometres from the top of the hill. A little bit further for these riders behind, as we get a shot of rider Hejidal, the reigning champion, sitting to the right of the movie star rider there, and he's of course being aided and abetted by Romanus Navardaskus, national time trial champion of Lithuania, wearing dossard number 7. And plenty of Garmin riders there and thereabouts. Thomas Decker makes his way up. Meanwhile, at the back of the group, Sandy Kazar. It doesn't look like he's enjoying it. Well, of course, he's taking the opportunity to have something to eat, and if there's no better place to have a bite to eat, really.
Well, I think Sandy Kazar, we've seen him in the past in the Tour de France and the other races. He just waits for his occasion. The first number of days, he knows that there's not much he can do here, and we will see him in a break as the race go on, because he is an old pro in there with quite a long time, very experienced, and you can be sure that he will, pick his days when the race settles down, and there's an opportunity for a big opportunity for the breakaway to stay out in front. Well, then he will be in those breakaways and being going for a stage victory.
How many bottles will a rider use is one question. It's a regular question again. As Dave on Route 13 asks, how many bottles will you go through in the day?
Well, I think they will go through certainly 12-15 bottles today. The conditions very warm, and the first days of the race as well, depending on where you're coming from. If you haven't been used to in the heat there for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the race, then it's a shock to the system, and you drink quite a lot. But if you're coming from a climate where you're used to riding, used to training in those conditions, then not as much, but still certainly 10 bottles plus for a rider today.
And Serpa from the Lamprey team, sporting a natty moustache. Perhaps the most impressive moustache in pro cycling, you'd have to say. Remind you of Urs Freuler from the 80s. He was one of the few in those days. Eric van Lanker's another name that comes to mind. Had a moustache for a while as a pro. Riders tend to try and take away as much body hair as possible, really, as a general rule. Even Bradley Wiggins has a pretty impressive haircut. He's got rid of his mod look for the first Grand Tour of his season. They do say it's a pretty impressive and epic event if you have to get a haircut during it. And the Tifosi out in force as ever, and appreciating the efforts of their countrymen. Fabio Tagore up front, leading the race and doing a great job now with just under 3 minutes advantage over the peloton. He's extending his lead over the group behind, but they'll be of limited concern to him. It's more about the gap that he has to the bunch behind, and he's giving himself a racer's chance of hanging on. It's a little bit of an ask. I mean, 2.5 minutes, I suppose, at that final ramp with 7 kilometers to go. That's possibility.
Yes, it's a possibility, but I think the calculation was making a possibility out of a breakaway if you arrive for the final ramp with a group of 5, 6, 7 riders, and everybody contributing quite well. Well, then if you're in good shape, you can go on and hold on with a 2.5 minute advantage. But the way it's coming down to the main bunch at the moment, just a fraction under 3 minutes, still with 34 k's to go, I'm afraid it's a big ask, looking a bit too big for me.
Yeah, even if he got to the top of the final hill, still with 20 kilometers of descending, the bunch are going to be able to descend faster than one man.
Yes, well,
with the wide open descents.
Yes, and of course you have to make the calculation as well. The distance he's going to be out in front here, then the effort he has to put in the climb, and that all takes its toll for the descent, because you're going to be really getting tired, and when you are tired you cannot descend as well. When you're real fresh, you can descend that bit faster, that much better, and that's going to be Tagore's problem. And I don't think his descent is going to be the problem here. He's going to be swallowed up before we get to that.
Quick shot of Cataldo of the Sky squad, who led the team across the line at the completion of the stage 2 team time trial, and had hoped, I think, to be in the Maglia Rosa today, but his finishing position wasn't good enough on the first day, so it's handed over to his fellow countryman to have the honour today. And one question is, what about his chances of hanging on to his jersey? They're looking stronger and stronger. He was in the group across the top of the first hill. Of course, there are bonuses on offer at the conclusion of the stage. 20, 12 and 8 seconds for the first 3 riders across the line respectively. Meanwhile, Dirk Bellemakers of Lotto Belisol goes to the front of the what remains of the break, as they hang on to an advantage of just about 1.5 minutes over the bunch. 29-year-old Dutchman. Been a pro for a long time. Well, he's been at continental level since 2004, so since he was around about 20 years of age, and then moved up to the big show a few years ago. This is his first year with Lotto. Several years with Lambo Credit. Yeah, and shout out for this is the first season that there's been a Greek rider. Ioannis Tamaridis is in a World Tour team, certainly is, and he's in the Giro d'Italia. So 2 debutant nations in the Giro d'Italia, China and Greece, in the shape of Ioannis Tamaridis, Greek national time trial champion as well, and riding with Euskaltel Euskadi. As this is the picture of Tagore, a picture of pain mixed with concentration as he races towards potential glory, but it's going to be difficult for him to hang on out front now with just a 2 minutes 25 advantage over the peloton, chasing hard behind. Welcome back. 32.5 kilometers remain of stage 3 of Giro d'Italia 2013, with Fabio Tagore out front for the Vini Fantini team and doing a wonderful job. He's got 1.5 minutes just under ahead of this group of 5 riders, his former breakaway companions, and it looks as if there's a little bit of activity up front in this group as at the back. Jaronson Pantano is really struggling with the pace, and it's Dirk Bellemakers that decides that he's not happy with the pace that's been put out there, so they're not really working well together as a group. Jackson Rodriguez it is who is charged with the job of closing down Bellemakers and trying to get him back, but well, this group is breaking up, and you know, do you think Sean? Do you think Tagore did the wrong thing? Was he foolish and just a little bit too impetuous to race off ahead of this break?
Yes, I don't know who made the decision here, but for me, it wasn't a decision, the good one at all. I could see is that, you know, to go out on your own at 50 kilometres to go, you know, it looks like it's, you know, going to be very difficult to hold on out there. And when you have a six-man breakaway and they were working pretty well together, you just you know, keep on riding with them. And when you look at Tagore's position, you know, 22 seconds on the general classification, it was, you know, a huge opportunity for him to try and hold that breakaway out there in front for as long as possible. And then on the final climb, you can do so much damage if you're feeling good. You're the strongest one of the six, go in the attack, and, you know, you could pull time out very quickly on your breakaway companions. So going at that time, you know, it was much too early, much too difficult to hold on your own. And we can see now the chasers, they're losing heart here. They're starting to attack each other because they know it's only a matter of time before they're going to be pulled in by the main peloton.
Peloton being marshalled by Sky, by Omega Pharma Quickstep, which would indicate that Mark Cavendish is comfortable enough, having been shelled on the first hill. He got back in there okay. So is our Omega Pharma Quickstep up there to perhaps spoil the effort of the peloton in chasing down the breakaway too quickly, or is it a case of well, no, we really believe we have a chance with Cavendish, or maybe one of their other riders?
Well, yes, it's been
interesting to see them up there.
It's interesting to see them up there, and you know, at the moment they are pushing on quite a strong pace, and you know, there's still time to close it down. But again, as we get to the climb, I suppose they want to have it as close as possible, because the guys from Omega Pharma Quickstep on the front, they are going to disappear very quickly. So I think they just want to get as close to the breakaway out front to the five riders, and then of course the lone breakaway out in front. They just want to close that gap to a minimum.
Now we had a question in as to whether Cadel Evans at 36 is still a Grand Tour contender, and who's the oldest rider in the race. Well, the oldest rider in the race is Stefano Garzelli, former winner, 39 years and 292 days at the beginning of the race on Saturday. Danilo Honda is also 39 years, about 172 days younger than Stefano Garzelli, though, so he's still certainly a venerable competitor. And indeed a very useful lead-out man. Did a great job for Nizzolo on the first stage, finishing himself, I think, in 6th position, just at the back of the group that was split ahead of the peloton. But Hondo is, he's been around a while. He's an old stager, so too is Garzelli. Danilo De Luca, 37 years and 123 days. Pablo Lastras is also 37, so too is Karsten Kroon. So Cadel Evans is a long way off being the oldest rider in this race. He's certainly the oldest of the favourites, the ones that are expected to challenge for honours. And do you believe that age is a limiting factor for Cadel Evans?
Well, I don't think the age he's at, the actual age at the moment, is not a problem for to win a big tour. He could be capable of doing that, but will he be able to get to the level that he was in the past? Last year in the Tour of France, you know, he certainly wasn't anywhere near that, but he is working on it this year, and that's been you know, the plan right from the beginning of season, thinking about the Tour. And of course there's a little bit of a change in the in his programme of racing where he comes to the Giro now, but that could be just, you know, to get better preparation for the Tour de France. But I would not say age is certainly not the, you know, the big barrier. I think he's, you know, he's still capable of doing it, but to get to that level, I think we'll have to wait, and time will tell.
And there's Mark Cavendish. Is he at the back of the group, and just how much is he suffering? And this could be his Waterloo in terms of stage 3. He's being marshalled by teammates. And that is the bunch ahead of him, and that is the sinking feeling I suspect that he's going to be feeling, because, well, his opportunities to take victory in this stage are disappearing. Question is, he's got, well, about 10k to the top of the hill and then 20k of a descent, so if he gets back on before the descent, he's got to get back up through the group. So it really is a big challenge for Mark Cavendish, but he will fight as long as he possibly can, as long as it's realistic. He'll certainly give it his all. There's no man more motivated. Meanwhile, up front in the breakaway group, chasing at just under 1 minute and 10 seconds. Pantano of Colombia leading the group, and Tagore up front, tapping out a very steady rhythm. The legs are going to be hurting now, though. 1.5 minutes between himself and the peloton, so the his 5 former breakaway companions are going to be mopped up pretty shortly.
Yes, and just inside the 30 kilometers to go. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of slowdown in the peloton at the moment. We can see there that they're looking on the front of the bunch and they're grouping very much together, so the pace have been knocked off quite a lot. We can see it here. They know that, you know, the group, everything under control, and they do not want to catch the group too early, because if you close down on the 5 men out in front, well, then there's going to be a lot more of attack, so the teams are going to go and attack and try and form another breakaway.
Yeah, the Sky that take it up. Katusha have stepped aside for the moment. We get a sight of the blue jersey of Giovanni Visconti, the Blue Mountains jersey. Will he be still wearing it after today? I think he needs to get points at the top of this hill, so I suspect he's moving up with thoughts of perhaps getting involved in the shake-up, assuming they pick up these 5 riders before the top, which seems, well, pretty much almost certain. Just, 20-30 seconds between themselves and the bunch behind. And groups off the back, at the back. It's Ryder Hagedal's Garmin Sharp squad that have gone to the front to set the tempo. Taking responsibility early on, perhaps laying down a marker and showing that they are the reigning champions. And are prepared to take responsibility and are prepared to show just the status that the #1 rider in this race actually has. Jeff Cure's asking, why do the team cars need to pull up alongside the riders to give instructions if they have radios? Is that a reasonable question?
To get a bit of publicity.
And they need to get their face on television as well. Yeah?
Well, I think the director sportif of Vinnie Fantini, Italia, Skinto, I think he wants to be on the television a lot, because we can see him there and he's coming up all the time to talk to his rider. I think he likes the exposure as much as his rider.
And Gianni Savio of Androni as well. Yeah, we've seen a bit of him on telly today.
And of course, when the car come up, you can see, you know, all the sponsors of the team, and you know, that is it's an opportunity for a small team, especially, you know, to get up there in the picture with the rider, with the team car, and sometimes some of the directors like to get on the TV screen as well.
Look at this savage pace being set by the Garmins on the front. Bradley sitting in 4th place, looks very comfortable indeed. Hagedal in 3rd, maybe a little less comfortable, but certainly able to follow the pace. But first rendezvous for the GC contenders in Giro d'Italia 2013. A little bit of a skirmish here, and Nibali's moving up on the outside. He suddenly realised, oh, wait a minute, it's on. That Scarponi too for the Lampre team is also being ever vigilant. And the Astana squad trying to get involved to support their rider Nibali, because Garmin have set down a marker here with this pace that they're setting, an absolutely searing pace, and you can be sure it's going to eliminate quite a few sprinters. Lots of the faster passista as well are also going to be shelled here. Oh, and it's all over for
Gatto, another sprinter.
Yeah, it's Oscar Gatto.
Certainly not going to get anywhere to near the finish day. We could see him there.
Well done for him.
He was on the very rear of the peloton, going through huge pain, and he's just totally throwing the towel.
So an interesting decision for the Garmin team, just at the top of that, before they headed down the descent. So they've got a couple of kilometers of this, and then they've another 7 kilometers up to the top. And problem for one of his teammates is Navardauskas of Lithuania. Did he pull a foot out?
No, missed his corner.
Oh, and ended up in the bank. So yeah, he did pull a foot out, but on purpose to try and steady himself, to keep himself upright. Meanwhile, up front, our lone leader Fabio Tagore, his lead will have shrunk considerably as a result of that little skirmish from Garmin. Still looks strong though. Still looks like he's full of energy. The legs will be starting to hurt, but there's still something in there. He hasn't quite gone on empty. So Hejjedal is clearly motivated and wants to show who's boss.
Yes, it's surprising to see the team of Garmin Sharp taking it up at this point. I thought, they would follow the race, but not at all. They really pushed on there, and you could see Navadescus in the descent pushing on so much that he had a near one on the corner there, but they're going to really explode the bunch here. But of course we have this battle up front now.
Nibali thought he was going to steal a march there, but Hejjedal's certainly alive to the danger. So too is Wiggins and Scarponi. They're right there, and they carrying teammates. Certainly Bradley Wiggins has plenty of teammates. An opportunity for is that Hessink has managed to weld himself to the back of the group. The tall figure from Blanco Pro Cycling is also involved. Scarponi. This is very much a GC group. No sign of Cadel Evans at the moment. Has he not been told? He can be sure that they will know in the team cars, and they'll be on the radio. And this is why we're seeing this savage pace up front, as this leading group have detached themselves from the rest of the peloton. Very interesting developments. No sign of Samuel Sanchez, and I think I caught sight of the Euskaltels on the front of the bunch, trying to do something about closing down this little gap. Scarponi sitting there, third last wheel for Lampre. And he's the old dog for the hard road. He knows what it takes. Of course, winner of this race a couple of years ago, inherited the victory with the elimination of Alberto Contador from the results during his appeal time. Ryder Hejjedal jumps out of the saddle. Problems for Movistar behind. And that's Herrada. Of course, the Movistar team have had all sorts of problems already. Juan Jose Cobo had his problems yesterday ahead of the team time trial. Fell off, injured himself, and then lost a couple of minutes in the team time trial, so he's pretty much out of the GC contention already. Look at this. Well, he's full of fight up front. Is the reigning champion Ryder Hejjedal. He's opened up several bike lengths advantage over the rest of the GC group, and this could be a significant moment. And as early as stage 3 of Giro d'Italia, we're seeing just how strong Ryder Hejjedal is. We got a glimpse of it in Liège-Bastogne-Liège when he did an absolutely stunning ride to deliver Dan Martin into the best possible position towards the end. I think Hejjedal himself could well have been a contender. Meanwhile, the Vini Fantini squad are exploding back. That's Tagore has been caught and eliminated, and what a wonderful effort it is from him. So let's give him a big cheer. But Tagore, his day is done in the sun, and it's now about Ryder Hejjedal, who's looking to ride on. Sean, could you have imagined this?
Well, with 25 kilometres to go, it's surprising to see him doing this so early in the race, being so aggressive. And there's a number of riders here. We can see from Astana, Nibali has a teammate there. He has Tanel Kangert with him. Of course, Wiggins have a teammate there. I can see. I reckon it should be Uran. So they are going to just make a tempo here, and to ride away on your own like that is going to be an impossible task. I think he's a bit over anxious at the moment, but maybe he feels that there's a lot of riders in difficulty further back. We see Cadel Evans is not here, and we could see the BMC riders. There were some of them on the front there and trying to close down the gap. Maybe he feels that in the earlier part of the race he can eliminate some of the favourites in the very earlier part.
Well, the question is this a pre-race plan, or is this something that he's just felt the conditions? And he's obviously got fantastic confidence at the moment, wonderful form. And the question is he just a little bit overconfident? He's got just under, 24.5 kilometres to go, so he's got about 4 kilometres to the top of the hill. And the Astana squad of Vincenzo Nibali attempts to close this one down. Riders managing to tag on from behind as well. And this is an interesting situation for Ryder Hejjedal. Does he persevere with this attack? There is the opportunity, of course, to take time on his rivals, plus the 20 seconds time bonus at the conclusion, but he's going to have to well, descend like an absolute demon off the final hill. And he's looking behind him. I think perhaps he's thinking about it. What would you do, Sean? 3 weeks to go?
Well, I think I would not be in the situation that Heigl is in. I would not go in the attack. I would just, follow the other favourites. When you have a 3-week race ahead of you, and when you look at the mountaintop finishes they've got here, to go in the attack so early, I think it's much too early. But again, riders, they feel the first couple of days they're coming into the race with real good shape. And as you said, Heigl, he was impressive in late Bastogne-Liège, and probably, that form is still there. So he wants maybe to take an advantage on some of the other favourites, and possibly what he was trying to do with the favourites. He was up here, he was hoping that they would continue on, they would try and follow his pace, his very fast pace setting there, and by doing that some of the other favourites that were not in this group further down the climb here, but now it looks like it all back together again, and it's he's knocked it off. He's realised that it's not going to be a possible one for him to pull any advantage out of any of the important general classification men.
Well, rider Heigl has been controlled. He is brought back to the group. He's been called to account for that little moment of impetuousness. A little bit of a conversation there, was it, with Nibali or Wiggins? And they know clearly rider Heigl is in good form, and it's interesting because this is not the sort of way that he rode the Giro d'Italia last year. He pretty much flew under the radar for a couple of weeks, and then he was thereabouts when it came to the time trial. I don't want to oversimplify it, but that was pretty much how he did last year's Giro d'Italia. It's obviously he's come in with a very, very different mindset this year. Well,
of course, last year he came in and he wasn't one of the big favourites for this year. The defending champion, he's one of the big ones here, and he's certainly not going to be allowed as much space as he was, maybe in the same situation last year. If he attacked like this, there wouldn't be as much as a reaction. But, winning last year, well, then you're going to be definitely a marked man. And we can see now that up front of the peloton here, looking at Nibali, of course, when it's in the situation as we have now, well then the risk of him attacking on the descent is huge here, so they have to be careful, and I think there will be a lot of guys, getting close to Nibali as we get to the top of this climb.
Well, Salvatore Puccio's struggling a little bit in the group. He just had Peter Steadman for company of Garmin Sharp. Groups all over the road, and it looks as if Salvatore Puccio could well be on his way to losing that jersey. It's been a great day out for him. He's got the pink handlebar tape, regulation handlebar tape these days for riders leading the race. And the question is, will it be Bradley Wiggins that heads into the leader's jersey at the conclusion of this race? Okay, we're going to take one final commercial break, just over 20 kilometers to go. Join us for the conclusion of this great stage after this short break.
Game.
Welcome back. This is the forlorn figure of the Maglia Rosa, Salvatore Puccio of the Sky team. He is out the back. He's been left to his own devices at this point. It's been a great day for him, but all eyes now are on the front of the race as the Astana team goes to the front to try and set the tempo for Vincenzo Nibali and perhaps set him up for something extraordinary towards the end. This is Tanel Kangert in the distinctive Estonian national champions jersey that's been setting the tempo to this point. On a stage of Tour of Switzerland last year, so clearly no slouch on the hills. And it looks as if they're going to be joined by a bigger group, and all the predictions were that it might be a group of around about 50 riders that could get to the finish. At the moment we've got what, maybe 15 up front. More riders coming very soon. Oh, there's a big bunch up front. 22 seconds now to the chasing group, and Salvatore Puccio now is heading towards a minute behind. It's going to be difficult for him to get back on in time for the finish, although no doubt there are riders around him who will be motivated, so you'd never know. 20 kilometers, it's a big ask really, isn't it, Sean? Especially with another kilometre of this pain and suffering to go before they get to the top of the hill.
Yes, anybody is in difficulty at the moment, unless you're in a group that's at 15, 20 seconds over the top, but you have to be in a group. If you're on your own, well then it's going to be impossible. And the way they're pushing on at the moment, Astana, are keeping a very high pace and getting closer to the summit in this one, and it's going to be a real worrying descent for a lot of riders here, because with Nibali, he's going to push on, his teammates will push on, and he possibly will really push on the descent. So anybody is losing contact here, it's going to be a big battle to get back in. And if you get back in from the efforts on the descent, well then, unless you're a real good sprinter, it's going to, you know, pay time at the end of the stage.
Tanel Kangert showing a certain amount of frustration there with the camera motorbike. Just got a little bit too close to him there in the hair in that last turn. And we get a shot of Danilo De Luca, who's really suffering. Former leading contender, a colourful figure in the sport, it has to be said. Now with Vinny Fantini, the man they call the killer. And he's not put in the hurt on anyone else today. That honour goes to Tanel Kangert at the moment, and the Astana team lined up at the front and doing a very strong job too being done by Bradley Wiggins. Interesting that his teammates are lined up behind him, so he wants to stay as close as possible to Vincenzo Nibali. He's going to follow him around for 3 weeks, except on those occasions where he's going to try and get away from him, or indeed when he's riding a time trial. So now heading towards the second mountain points of the day. Heading for the descent of Sella di Catona with just over 20 kilometres to go. Scarponi's in there, Visconti's in there. Visconti's won a couple of stages, of course. And Visconti's looking for an opportunity to score some points here, and I think he's got an excellent chance of doing it. And that might be just the job for him to hang on to that Mountain Leaders jersey for another day. Yeah, plenty of questions coming in on Twitter about cars getting in the way and motorbikes getting in the way and worrying the riders. Generally speaking, the motorbike riders are very, very skilled, incredibly skilled, and they don't cause any problem for the riders. And the riders are they're quite used to having motorcycles around them and cars around them, so it's not really an issue. As we see, no surprise here. Mountains classification leader Visconti. Visconti, of course, is also Sicilian and is one of those 6 Sicilians that has worn the Maglia Rosa over the years. Wore it on a couple of occasions in 2008. He's been a stage winner as well. He's had great success at this race. It's a race that's been kind to him. He's enjoying it, and he takes the points at the top of the third category. Sella di Catona, as the riders now prepare for this treacherous descent to the finish. Visconti immediately and dutifully slots back in the Astanas. Slots up back in behind them. Yeah, it's interesting that Cadel Evans wasn't able to follow that little skirmish and wasn't able to get involved. I'm presuming he's back in there. I've no indication that he isn't, but it certainly wasn't a good sign for him that he wasn't immediately all over that little skirmish set off by rider Hajidal.
Yes, I think he was taken by surprise, that, you know, and it was a surprise to me as well to see one of the big favourites going in the attack. You know, they were setting a good strong pace on the front, and I think a number of riders, including Cavendish Evans, were caught out, sitting a bit too far back, and we could see the group. You know, there was only a very small group of big favourites up there, 15, 18 riders, and he just got caught a bit further back, but rectified the situation quite well, and he has to be in there now. I think I've seen him a bit further back in the group here, and it's Astana who will continue on making the pace. You know, the rider in the front, Fabio Aru and Agnoli there in second place, with Nibali very close by, and we can see all the big favourites are starting to crowd around behind Nibali, because they're just worried about that he will start pushing on the descent, and you want to be on his wheel as quickly as possible.
Does Hajidal strike a psychological blow with that, or will the likes of Wiggins and Nibali just think, oh well, I mean, you know,
Well, I think some of the riders will get a little bit nervous, but you know, the riders who are experienced and they're solid stage race riders, you know, they're going to say, well, you know, Heidal, what's he doing here at the moment? You know, when you see him going out in the attack, well, there's no point in doing that. As a favourite for the race, you're only just, you know, burning up your energy too early in the race for no gain whatsoever, and you know, they're going to be quite relaxed about it. But as you get to the descent, you're always a little bit concerned when you have a real good descender that can descend so fast, and if you're not, you know, comfortable on the descent, well, then it's a little bit of worrying times in this situation on a stage like today.
Question from Oz Knitter on Twitter is who can match Nibali's descending skills? Well, who indeed? And indeed, will Vincenzo Nibali try and take the opportunity to get away?
Well, I think if you look at the peloton at the moment, there's not anybody in there really who can match Nibali when he really goes for it in the descent. You'd have to go back a number of years and take a few guys out of retirement. Sabordelli was a brilliant descender, and you know, he won Giros because of his descending, or maybe not won, but it certainly helped a lot. But at this moment in peloton, I think Nibali, he is by far the best descender on the big long descents. And of course, you know, you don't get the opportunity to see the big sprinters up front.
Well, look at that. Come at the hour, come at the man. Is this? No, it is not. I got a bit excited. It is in actual fact Agnoli off the front for the Astana squad. Perhaps offering the springboard for Vincenzo Nibali. Someone is going to have to chase this. Other riders that are a little bit twitchy and perhaps fancy their chances are going to have to chase this down. And will it offer the opportunity for oh, and look at this, it's Heidal that draws up alongside Agnoli. Agnoli will sit in behind him, that's indeed if he can. Heidal looks to see if he's coming with him. He absolutely is, and Heidal is unbelievably and excitingly, I think, frisky. He's up for it in a big way. Luca Paolini, who won Gent-Wevelgem this year, and we had targeted. Katusha showed a huge amount of enthusiasm for chasing early on, and Luca Paolini clearly has good legs today. He told his teammates they did a good chase for him, and now they've got a decent advantage. 30 seconds, they're saying, to the chasing group. If that's true, it's unbelievable that they managed to draw it out that quickly. Meanwhile, the group behind Watch and the Blanco squad on the front, is it Robert Hessink? It's Hessink, I think, is fourth or fifth rider there. BMCs have arrived.
Yes, and it looks like Kreiswick on the front for the Blanco team, and a lot of action here, and it's amazing that you know, Heidal, he's really on fire today. He is you know, just attacking, and any moment he's going for it, and he must, you know, be feeling on one of these great days.
Well, you know, all the talk before Giro d'Italia 2013 was about Bradley Wiggins in the time trials versus Vincenzo Nibali attempting to take time in the mountains, and it was, you know, that was the belief. Heidal, yes, the reigning champion, included in all the previews, but people were saying, well, I don't know about that. I don't think that Heidal can, that lightning can strike twice. Well, at the moment, he's giving a demonstration of the extraordinary form that he's got. Interesting that Astana sent Agnoli up the road. What was their thinking there, one wonders, as Heidal attempts to hang on to his advantage. And it looks as if they've closed it down. So 30 seconds might have been a slightly erroneous number. And this is a long, winding, twisting descent. Technical, I think, is the word for it. And it'll definitely favour the brave.
Fast descending here, everybody in one line, and we can see just gaps appearing, and they're certainly, you know, pushing on at a real hard pace here.
How come it's so, you know, it is that much easy, or appears to be easy, for riders to close up on the descent? I mean, everyone's pushing. 240 back to Salvatore Puccio, so it's looking all up for him. His days as the leader are, well, his moments as the leader are numbered. Meanwhile, out front, here is Heidal and Agnoli. Agnoli won't go around and give a turn, no question about that. They've got a few bike lengths advantage over Paolini. BMC also up there.
Looking like Santa Marita from BMC, and we also see a Vini Fantini rider, Sant'Ambrogio, just coming across there, but the gap is minimal, as we can see there. The group of other big favourites, including Wiggins, very close, but a lot of riders, you know, really fighting here. And the riders who are not comfortable on the descent, when they really push on like this, well, then they really come under pressure. And we could see the rider from AG2 Mondial there, looks like
Pozzovivo, I think it was, wasn't he?
Pozzovivo, or possibly the other Colombian rider, Betancourt.
They're the two favourites for AG2 Le Mondial, both two great climbers, perhaps a little less suited to this descent. But if they can tag on to the back of the group, they'll get hauled towards the finish. And look at the way groups are snaking around the road. There are groups all over the place on this descent. So 13 kilometres left, and Pozzovivo, I think it is, on the back of this group tagging on. Is he, well, is this the back of the front group? Is this the back of the Wiggins group? I'm not sure it is. So Pozzovivo could well be in trouble, and this is an important moment for him. Confirmation of the mountain sprint at the top of the second sprint. Visconti it is that takes the 5 points ahead of the two Astanas that were less concerned with this competition, and he'll hang on to his Blue Mountains jersey for at least one more day. Pozzovivo, though, has work to do. And up front, Hejidal had slightly overcooked it. He attacks again, and he's unbelievably frisky. Paolini has a little look behind. Scarponi has managed to get in here by the looks of things. Scott Burton says if Ryder loses his defence of the Giro, we will all look back at stage 3. Sean, can you tell me what he's thinking? Well, I don't think this is necessarily a bad sign. Oh, and one of the AG2R riders manages to drag himself out of the bushes. Great to see there was no harm done there, but you definitely don't want to fall off on this descent. The road conditions not absolutely perfect. It's a very technical descent. Let's get another look at it. Just runs in a bit hot. That's one of his teammates, as we see it's Betancourt. Yes, it's Betancourt that was a little bit further ahead, so it's pretty Pozzovivo that just passed him. A worrying moment.
Yes,
for the young Colombian. Much is expected of this young man. He is definitely a rising talent, as we see Hejidal on the front again. Hejidal attacks once more. He's marshalled well by the Astanas. And Luca Paolini is in there for Katusha. Wiggins holding a watching brief and playing it very cool, calm and collected at the moment. And these are nervous moments. Grand Tour contenders, for the most part, with perhaps the exception of Vincenzo Nibali, don't actually want to make the race on the descent if they can possibly avoid it. They want to box things off into the time trials or the climbs if they possibly can.
Yes, well, you don't want to take big risk, and you know, for the big favourites who are not maybe as good as ascenders as Nibali, you try and, you know, minimise the risk as much as possible. But you have to, you know, push on there, because otherwise Nibali will take a big advantage. But the ones who are really suffering is the climbers, and we could see Betancourt there, you know, under pressure. Pozzovivo doesn't like this, and they really have to push the limit out a big time, and that's where you get it wrong. And it's not surprising that we're seeing riders going out, and it's lucky that the good conditions here, because imagine if we had wet conditions on this descent, well, then it would, you know, be carnage.
Well, Hejidal is obviously being encouraged to keep going, because presumably one or two other leading contenders, the likes of Pozzovivo, but perhaps other riders that are decent time trialists. Is Cadel Evans in there? That's the question. There is a BMC in there just behind Scarponi, you'll see in the pink is BMC. Is it Cadel Evans? I'm not absolutely 100% sure. Could well be another one. And Hejidal seems to run a little bit wide on a couple of these turns. It's an indication of just how hard he's trying. Opens up another couple of bike lengths with that big attack. And it's fabulous racing, you'd have to say, Sean. I mean, this is not the sort of open exciting racing that we are used to seeing. There's so much talk about power meter riding and controlling things on the front, and Ryder Hagedal, well, it's a harking back to an earlier era, this kind of racing, and so early in a Grand Tour. It's pretty exciting, and it definitely bodes well for the rest of the 3 weeks.
Yes, well, of course, when you have a descent like this in the final kilometres of the stage, well, the situation, the breakaway being pulled back, well, you're going to have exciting racing. There's always somebody will try and go in the attack, possibly for a stage win, but here's the big favourites who are attacking, which is making it really excited. And we can see that leading group there, the BMCs, they have 2 riders in there, so I think San Marita and Cadel Evans, I would reckon, are the 2 men from BMC.
Rafał Majka of Poland, team Saxo Tinkoff at the back of that group. And Pozzovivo's managed to get in here as well. Another AG2R up there. But they've still got work to do. And Ryder Hagedal seeing the opportunity to eliminate a few riders, doing it all on his own. Hasn't got any company from Garmin Sharp. That might well be a little bit of a concern for him as the weeks progress. It's pretty exciting stuff, but that he's left vulnerable and left on his own at this point in what's a tough stage, absolutely, make no question about it. But this is not a serious high mountain stage. And it looks like is the cavalry coming? No, a couple of Sky Riders coming up. Oh, and look at this, problems for the Estonian national champion. It's Tanel Kangert. And that's the kind of pace that Ryder Hagedal was setting, and that's the pressure that he put him under. Nibali is left without one of his lieutenants as they head towards the conclusion. Hit another, just a little bit of a ramp here. This a short ramp of just about a kilometre. And Rigoberto Urán is in here. So riders coming back, so more support for Bradley Wiggins, support too for Vincenzo Nibali, although he's lost Kangert.
Also support for Ryder Hagedal. We see a Garmin Sharp rider just moving up there as well, so he has got a teammate still in this group, and we can see there's a number of riders coming back, and difficult to get a real picture on the descent, because we could see the favourites there, but a group very close, and now they're just starting to get onto the rear of this group of favourites.
Rue on the front gives a little flick, and Hagedal's a little bit less interested in coming around. He's done enough for now, I think. And the question now is this the group that is going to fight out the finish? Now with just 7.4 kilometres remaining, they're going to hit the descent again. And how many decent sprinters are in there? Luca Paolini of Katusha we've flagged with the hardshell helmet, the white hardshell helmet. Well, harder than most. It's certainly the least vented helmet of those on view.
And groups everywhere on this little bit of a drag up before we start the final run into the finish, and we can see there groups of 10 riders, then another group of 15 or 20 riders, so it's really blown the peloton apart on this descent.
This is going to be one tough Giro d'Italia, you can be sure of that. There's a lot of talk about whether this course was just that little bit easier, and problems for one of the Colombian riders, comes to grief but manages to get back in there. Great to see Team Colombia back in the race and just overshooting. And it's Gomez. Chalaput Gomez, Robinson to his family. As Paolini goes on the attack, we said he had a gallop. We weren't perhaps expecting this, but we did see something like this kind of performance from him in the Spring Classic. So Luca Paolini has come into this season in great form, and he's decided to go for glory. And you would have to expect that the leading contenders could well give him a little bit of leeway here. The leading GC riders have plenty of teammates that are probably more concerned with making sure that the likes of Bradley Wiggins, Ryder Hayes et al., Vincenzo Nibali, Cadel Evans et al. Were actually well tended, and they weren't losing any time to the other leading contenders. So it could well be that Paolini has picked a good time to go.
Yes, and it's a good time because, of course, the big favourites, they will allow Paolini to, take an advantage. He's not a danger man at all for general classification. So we can see there on the front, Rigoberto Urán from the Sky team just setting the pace, and he will probably just continue on doing that because they're not going to be majorly concerned about Paolini out front.
Just one visit to the Giro d'Italia for Luca Paolini, but which is a surprise for an Italian, but he's been with teams that have been less concerned with the Giro, and of course, with his abilities as a one-day rider, perhaps less interested in his home Grand Tour, but well, he'll be absolutely made up if he manages to hang out in front. 6 seconds his advantage. It's not terribly significant at the moment, and the Blanco team have decided to go to the front, ostensibly looking after Robert Hessink. Perhaps they're just taking responsibility for staying ahead of GC contenders that are out the back of this group, and less concerned really with closing down Paolini. But the result of it may well be that Paolini is chased down. At the moment it's tentative. 6 seconds is not really all that significant, but if he gets to the flat bit at the bottom, and there's a very small short flat bit at the bottom with well, 15-20 seconds, you've got to say that Luca Paolini has done a great job. He has got a teammate there in second place, and more riders coming to grief, and there have been lots and lots of crashes on this descent. It's an indication of just how difficult it is. It's a good day for the Katusha so far, but not good for everybody on the Katusha team. Paolini can pick his own lines through these corners as he winds his way through the last 3 miles of this third stage of Giro d'Italia. Oh, the legs are hurting then. He just wanted to coast back up to speed, but he knows that he's got to jump out of the saddle the minute he gets beyond the apex. Luca Paolini out front, heading towards victory in stage 3 of Giro d'Italia. 11 seconds to the good. It's looking good for him at this point. Would you like to have a bet on Paolini at this point, Sean?
Well, it's looked like that Blanco team are taking it up, and if they continue on to ride for a teammate, they must have somebody in here who they feel can get something out of it. But Paolini descending very well. He's a real good descender. He's a classic rider, so he can descend at a very fast rate. 11 seconds an advantage. It's going to be very, very tight, and of course, when you're just hanging out there, a number of riders here will see that. They'll just see you in the final 2 kilometres, and then they could probably have somebody else go in the attack. It's going to be a real tight one, but he's in with a good shout at the moment.
Yeah, Luca Paolini's given himself a racer's chance of hanging on. They've pared back a couple of seconds. He's taken victory this year, of course, in Omloop Het Nussblad. Managed to sprint in ahead of Stein Vandenberg on that occasion, and this would make it doubly a great season. Another problem.
2 Blancos.
And 2 of the Blanco riders who were chasing Paolini have come down. Is that Scarponi, or it's one of the Lampre riders? No, I don't think so.
Yes, Scarponi.
Oh, and it is Scarponi, one of the leading contenders. His bike is broken. It looks like the rear mech had fallen off there. So big problems for Scarponi, and that crash is a long way from the last 3 kilometres as Visconti comes around and encounters a Blanco rider attempting to get himself back up and going. So it's good news for Luca Paolini. You think this could well help him and aid him towards success, but bad news for one of the GC contenders, Michele Scarponi. Oh, they all went, the Blancos overshot in a big way, and Scarponi got on the brakes and fell off before they did. But of course, when you're in third place and you're following the line of the riders in front, and they drag you in a bit too deep,
yes, well,
that's what can happen.
We could see the Blanco rider look like maybe Kreisweg leading there and just pushing it too much, slide it out, and then Scarponi see that and went on the brakes a little bit too heavy, and down he goes also. And
more riders in trouble. Is that from that one of the Androni riders coming to grief? And I don't know how many riders we've seen crashing on this descent, but it's certainly living up to the reputation that it had coming into this stage. Tight, twisty, and very, very treacherous. And remember, these roads were wet up until a couple of hours ago, and luckily the hot afternoon sunshine has managed to burn them dry, because it'd be absolute carnage out here, I can tell you, if it was not for this. And more problems for Lamprey. That's Stortoni, Simone Stortoni. Manages to click in and get going, but his chances of any sort of a decent result are done. I think he was behind anyway. Don't think he was involved in that lead group. A man who certainly was Luca Paolini, racing towards glory in Marina di Assia. Will he be able to hang on? He steals a little look behind him. And he's getting encouragement from his team car and from the, or is that from the race director? I think it's from the camera bike, really, isn't it? And they're roaring him to victory. Can he hang on? Luca Paolini racing clear. Behind it looks like Hejidal, is it? That's chasing. And he's got Nastana for company as ever. Certainly one of the Garmins. Not sure it is Hejidal, actually.
Yes, it is Hejidal.
No, it is Hejidal now. Is there an opportunity perhaps for Nibali to grab a couple of seconds? Tell you who's conspicuous by his absence from the front of this group at the moment is Bradley Wiggins. Meanwhile, Paolini races in under the kite. It's looking good for him now. The man from Katusha, who took victory in Het Nieuwsblad earlier this year. He's won a stage of the Vuelta a España in the past. He's only ever taken part in his home Giro d'Italia on one occasion, but now he's racing to victory in stage 3, taking a career-defining success, you would have to say. Strong all day. He managed to stay up front in the mountains, was ever vigilant with all the attacks from rider Hejidal and the other riders from the leading group. And he has a little look behind. He's inside the last 500 metres, clicking through the gears and looking down to try and just make sure that he concentrates and makes it all the way to the line. But he's got time to zip up his jersey and contemplate the value of this success as they're racing hard behind him, and Hejidal's involved in the thick of the fight. Remember, there's 12 seconds and 8 seconds for second and third across the line, and they'll be fighting for every possible second they can get, as Paolini will look behind all the way to the line. You could just ride it a little bit harder. Now there's a little bit of a stall as they have a think about it coming up to this final corner.
And Paolini should be pushing on, because he's only at 19 seconds in general classification, and looking around here, if you know,
there's an opportunity for is he giving up a chance to wear the Maglia Rosa?
Well, he has given up the chance. The last 400 or 500 metres he's been looking about. He should have pushed on, because with the bonus and the advantage he will have.
Paolini takes victory in stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia 2013. Who's going to make it in second place? It's a sprint of non-sprinters, you would expect. Is this Cadel Evans that's coming out with it? Cadel Evans with a very, very useful 12 seconds time bonus. Rider Hejidal gets the 8 seconds, and that's pretty useful again in their battle against Bradley Wiggins and the other time trial superstars. But it was no doubt about the man who took the victory. He could perhaps have been a little bit more had Luca Paolini been thinking about it, but nonetheless it's a very, very successful day for Katusha, for Luca Paolini, and a successful day too, you'd have to say, for Cadel Evans, who was anonymous for much of the early skirmishing, but managed to come up with a good result at the end of it as the riders sprint in dribs and drabs. There's little groups all over the road. Visconti in the mountains jersey makes it home in a very high and respectable position within a minute of the leaders. And Lamprey riders making it home. Was that Scarponi? I think it could well have been, accompanied by a teammate who lost a minute on the leading contenders. We'll look for confirmation of that, but disappointing day for Scarponi as riders in groups come back in dribs and drabs. But Luca Paolini it is that takes victory in stage 3 of Giro d'Italia. Riders still chasing hard. Well, Katusha certainly were right to set the tempo, weren't they? in chasing down that break. They did a great job for Luca Paolini, and he took his opportunity perfectly. I think perhaps he had a little look around the group and saw that there weren't too many riders that were thinking about stage success, that most of them were concerned in one way or another with the battle for overall honours, and well, he took a perfect opportunity, having made it into that leading group. That was where the win was created, really.
Yes, and he, you know, a real good ascender. He sees his opportunity to go it alone there, and because there were riders coming back in, so with the finish, quite a lot of it downhill, very technical. He's really good at that, and you know, put in a great performance. And it looked like in general classification he could go into the race leadership.
So he still could conceivably be on his way to the pink jersey. Perhaps he should have ridden all the way to the line, though. Every few seconds counts, especially when he's trying to defend it. And is he pointing towards his helmet, or is he pointing towards his intelligence, his head, to suggest how smart he is? And a little point to the sky, thanking the gods for the strength that they gave him to come up with this victory. And a good save, you'd have to say, from Cadel Evans. His competitive instinct has not been dulled one whit over the years, has it?
No, well, on the circumstance today, I think, you know, it was a surprise for a lot of riders, as we can see him here, you know, just starting out the sprint and, you know, finishing quite strongly, and I suppose correcting the situation quite well, but it was a surprise to see our defending champion rider Heisdal so active there in the final climb of the day.
So there is confirmation of the results of stage 3, with Luca Paolini taking the victory for Katusha, just 16 seconds ahead of Cadel Evans, who led in the group, including rider Hejadal Sant'Ambrosio, a man we didn't speak too much about, but potential overall contender for Vinny Fantini in a fine 4th place. Samuel Sanchez got back involved for Euskaltel. Caruso of Katusha was there helping Paolini. Weaning Wiggins were also in that group, but perhaps a little bit disappointing for Bradley Wiggins that he wasn't able to stay close to the other GC contenders in the battle for those bonus seconds.
Well, I don't think he's too concerned about the little bit of a bonification time-wise in the available at the finish line, but you know, staying in contention, we could see them. He was following down the descent there, as they were some of his teammates, and he just got to stay out of danger, really, because we did see, you know, the rider sliding out there was a real dangerous descent.
In the pink jersey, you must have looked at this stage as one that suited you. How does it feel to be mission accomplished?
Ho cominciato a crederci da ieri dopo la cronosquadra, ho visto che il mio svantaggio era di 19 secondi, quindi con la buona di tappa potevo conquistare la maglia rosa. Logicamente era un sogno,
absolutely thrilled to have taken victory. And no doubt he's also thrilled as well that it is confirmed that he will be wearing Maglia Rosa. A broad beaming smile for the first time today from Luca Paolini, who it is confirmed by Dan Lloyd and others that he will wear the Maglia Rosa heading into stage 4. And the overall standings there are confirmed. 17 seconds to the good ahead of Bradley Wiggins. So he got the 20 seconds and the 16 seconds, and of course he traded about 16 to Wiggins. 14 seconds, I think it was, to Wiggins in the team time trial yesterday. Rigoberto Urán is in 3rd position for Sky at the moment. Benet Inchausti there as well, and Hejadal moves into the top 10 overall.